Got big group here today. Everybody's in a good mood to start off the week for us. So welcome to the Education Committee. Public hearing. My name is Dave Merman. I'm from Glenville, Nebraska. I represent District 38, which is 8 counties along the southern tier in the middle part of the state. I serve as chair of this committee. The committee will take up the bills in the order posted outside of the hearing room. Our hearing today is your public part of the legislative process. This is your opportunity to express your position on the proposed legislation before us today. We do ask that you limit handouts. This is important to note. If you are unable to attend a public hearing and would like your position stated for the record, you must submit your position and any comments using the legislature's online database by 12 p.m. the day prior to the hearing. Letters emailed to a senator or staff member will not be part of the permanent record. You must use the online database in order to become part of the permanent record. To better facilitate today's hearing, I ask that you abide by the following procedures. Please turn off cell phones and other electronic devices. The order of testimony is introducer, proponents, opponents, neutral, and closing remarks. If you will be testifying, please complete the green form and hand it to the clerk when you come up to testify. If you have any written materials that you would like distributed to the committee, please hand them to the page to distribute. We need 11 copies for all committee members and staff. If you need additional copies, please ask a page to make copies for you now. When you begin to testify, please state and spell your name for the record. Please be concise. It is my request that you limit your testimony because of the large group here today to 3 minutes. If necessary, we will use the light system. Green for 2 minutes, you have 1 minute left, and red, wrap up your comments. If your remarks were reflected in previous testimony, or if you would like your position to be known but do not wish to testify, please sign the white form at the back of the room and it will be included in the official record. Please speak directly into the microphone so our transcribers are able to hear your testimony clearly. I'd like to introduce my committee staff. To my immediate right is legal counsel John Duggar. Also to my right at the end of the table is committee clerk Kennedy. The committee members with us today will introduce themselves beginning at my far right.
Good morning. I'm Rita Sanders. I represent District 45, which is the Bellevue Offit community.
Good morning. I'm Luann Lenihan. I represent District 39, which is Elkhorn and Waterloo in Douglas County.
Hi, I'm Joni Albright, District 17, Wayne, Thurston, Dakota, and a portion of Dixon County in Northeast Nebraska. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Lynn Walls. I represent Legislative District 15, which is all of Dodge County and now Valley.
Good morning. Tom Breezy. I represent District 41.
Good morning. Danielle Conrad, District 46 in North Lincoln.
And I'll ask the pages to stand and introduce themselves and tell us what and where they are studying.
My name is Morgan. I'm a senior at UNL and I'm studying political science.
My name is Ryan. I'm a freshman at UNL and I'm studying business administration.
I'm Christy. I'm a junior at UNL and I'm studying political science and history.
Glad to have you here. Please remember that senators may come and go during our hearing as they may have bills to introduce in other committees. Refrain from applause or other indication of support or opposition. For our audience, the microphones in the room are not for amplification, but for recording purposes only. And with that, we will begin our hearing with LB 585. Welcome, Senator Hughes.
Like I'm a little girl in a big chair. Okay.
Chairman Merman and members of the committee, I am here today to introduce LB 585, a bill to provide our schools with greater flexibility in providing more comprehensive annual behavior and mental health training that focuses on suicide awareness and prevention. Suicide awareness and prevention training is a very important part of the overall behavioral and mental health programs in our public schools. Under our current law, Nebraska educators, school administrators, and staff are required to take an hour of training focused on suicide awareness and prevention. This is a good thing. We support this. However, the current interpretation of the law has the unintended consequence of forcing our educators to sit through essentially the same exact training year after year. As a former school board member of Seward Public Schools, I feel strongly that our educators deserve more credit for retaining this information and that a valuable opportunity is being lost to provide additional information regarding behavioral mental health, especially as it relates to suicide prevention in youth. LB 585 simply provides our school districts the ability to provide our educators and staff with a more comprehensive training curriculum rather than repeating the same 1-hour class year after year. As we've learned through an unfortunate number of tragedies involving our youth in recent years, the factors contributing to suicide are varied and multifaceted. The warning signs are equally complicated and diverse. We cannot expect our educators to rely upon a one-size-fits-all approach in confronting this difficult issue, especially during a 1-hour, once-a-year session. Following me today, I have invited former Senator Amanda McGill Johnson, who authored LB 923 in 2014 and saw that important piece of legislation through the finish line, making suicide and awareness and prevention a part of the annual preparedness training for our state's public educators and administrators. The OG of this issue, former Senator McGill, will speak on her bill, LB 923, and give her thoughts on how LB 585 reaffirms the original intent of that legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Thank you. Any questions for Senator Hughes at this time? If not, we will invite the first.
We'll get to the OG.
Yes.
Maybe the first time ever.
Here's the OG, take it.
Why not? Why not? Hi,
Good morning.
good morning. Yes, there's my sheet. I am Amanda McGill Johnson, AMANDA MCGILLJOHNSON. I am representing myself, but as well as the Nebraska Association of School Boards. I also happen to serve on the Millard Public Schools Board of Education. So I have the reverse experience that Senator Hughes has. I was a legislator first, and now I get to go and look at what I've done to school districts directly. And honestly, I get razzed a lot for passing this as a mandate on schools. I mean, they get the importance of the issue, but when school boards come and talk to you about the mandates and things that are put on schools, my bill is on that list. And I take that kindly. I can take a razzing about it, but I stand firmly, in support of this legislation that I passed in 2014 with the help of Senator Conrad and others. Suicide and behavioral health issues in our students have only gotten worse. Like, it is the second leading cause of death for our youth. And so I take mental health and suicide prevention incredibly seriously. And so I certainly would not want to weaken the legislation that we had passed. But being on a school board and seeing how a bill has been enacted, this is not the first bill that I've seen interpreted differently than I had anticipated. And some of you will have that experience once you're not senators anymore, where you've passed something you're proud of and then you see it play out and you're like, well, it's not exactly what I intended or had hoped for. And what the reality on the ground is exactly what Senator Hughes said, in that there were just a couple of trainings to choose from, some of which I've heard were really great, but then eventually became an offering that cost something. And so then the district would pivot to one of the free offerings that maybe wasn't as strong of a training. And you have people watching the same training over and over and over again. Not to mention, I think in my brain, when I saw suicide prevention training, I thought it would include trainings on the things on this list. And so I think this is a good opportunity to come back in and make some really reasonable adjustments to better meet the needs of our schools. Questions?
Thank you, Ms. McGill. Any questions? Senator Albright?
Thank you. on page 3 in here, they actually say employees who interact with students.
Yeah.
Employees. So before it listed nurses, teachers, counselors, school psychologists, administrators, and school social workers. So who else would be able to? What is this bill?
It actually, I think that tweak, which in my mind is secondary, really just removes maybe a few folks who were required to take it, but they weren't interacting with kids. There are some district staff, especially in bigger districts, that really don't interact with kids directly, but we're having to take this training under that old language that kind of listed everybody out.
Okay, so employees who interact with students. Would there be anyone else in the group that we took out that would actually come back in, like outside sources perhaps?
I don't think so. I don't think that's the intention anyway. You could talk to Senator Hughes about that. I don't think the intention was to add anyone.
It's nice when a bill kind of spells out more of who you're trying to capture that should or shouldn't be
Mhm.
in contact with these students. So, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Senator Breezy.
Thank you, Chairman Merman. Thank you for your testimony
Yeah.
here today. We currently mandate at least 1 hour. Do you
Yeah.
know if school districts are exceeding that 1 hour?
I don't believe
Commonly.
so. There are a lot of things that have to be crammed in, like at the
Yeah.
beginning of a school year for teachers.
Okay.
And that's why, we get razzed in that list of things and mandates.
It's just-
So I don't believe anybody is exceeding. Now, some of the professional school counselors, some of the folks who were on that list probably do exceed that in some way.
Is 1 hour enough a year?
Yes, I would hope that some maybe get additional professional development, but I think mandating more than 1 hour, just, especially under the current confines of what is offered, would not be helpful. But honestly, I haven't really thought through that question.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions? We good? If not, thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank
Any other proponents for LB 585?
Hello, I'm one of those people that can answer the questions that you were asking. My name is Deb Rasmussen, DEB RASMUSSEN. Thank you, Senator Merman and members of the committee for this opportunity to speak with you today. I'm a proud Nebraska public school teacher and counselor with a 39-year-long career teaching and counseling in elementary and middle schools. I'm a member of the Nebraska State Education Association and the president of the Lincoln Education Association. I'm here to encourage you to support and advance LB 585. I have all this written down, but after hearing your questions, I want to explain some of the answers to things. When we're talking about this training, counselors and school psychologists and social workers, we have hours and hours and hours of training. The district provides us with this training. We do it in our schools together. We train people. But these videos that they have made us watch, I know they switched it up this year, but I was doing the same video for an hour for 3 years straight. And I was so bored with it that sometimes I would give the wrong answer just to see what the computer program did, because I knew what was going on. And I'm also it hits hard today because we've had a completed suicide at East High today. There's been 3 of them at East High and Lincoln this year. I have had my brother and my father complete suicide. So this is a hot topic for me. And it is so much more than just suicide prevention. There are so many behavior and mental health issues. And it's not always those things. You see the kid that's screaming and painting on their arms. Those aren't the students that we're looking at. We're talking about high achieving students that are active in so many different areas, that are pushing themselves too hard, that we need training on so teachers can see that. They're always looking for the obvious person. That's not what it always is. And that's why we need to expand this training. No, we can't do more than an hour though, because as the president and a counselor and an educator, I've got family that teaches, they are so stretched, but they also feel so responsible for their students, and they take it so personally if they haven't been able to help someone. So we need training, because there are so many more issues just than that oh, I'm sitting in your classroom and I've thrown something at a teacher, some of the scenarios that I've seen on the videos, or we need to expand upon it. I loved the bill in 2012. I just think it needs to be modified to meet our needs today. It hurts me every time I hear that another student has completed suicide and they say there were no signs. Unfortunately, in my personal experience, there are always signs. I look back at hindsight to my family members and some students I've had, but we haven't always picked up on those signs. The gifted child that was in band and seemed to have everything going completes a suicide the day before school starts because they're so worried that they're not going to get good enough grades to get into the college that they wanted to go into. So that's why I'm a big proponent of this bill. And I really, really, really recommend that this go out of committee, go on the floor, and be passed.
Thank you, Ms. Rasmussen. Any questions?
It's good seeing you. She's my representative in my district.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, my name is Edison McDonald, Edison McDonald. I'm here representing the ARC of Nebraska and myself. The ARC of Nebraska is the state's largest membership organization representing people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we support LB 585 to ensure we match the original intent of the authorizing language in LB 923 in 2014. You may have noticed I said I'm representing myself as well today. When this bill first came out, it was 3 months after my sister died of suicide. I came and I testified on that bill, talking specifically about these problems because those problems have not shifted very much since 2014. We continue to see so many barriers. We continue to see teachers who see opportunities, who see things that they should talk about. And I'll say, that there were teachers that should have said things about what my sister had said, about her artwork, that could have helped save her life. So I think that really ensuring we have this bill passed to ensure that we're really looking at all of those factors. I think Senator McGill said it well. I don't think any of us who testified then thought that it would just be solely limited to suicide. We really thought that it was going to cover all of those surrounding pieces because that comprehensive approach to behavioral health care is so vital. And with that, I'll open to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Any questions for Mr. McDonald? Thank you very much. Hello.
Hi, I'm Mary Kelly, Mary Kelly, and I'm with the League of Women Voters of Nebraska. And we support funding a mental and behavioral health care system that provides comprehensive and coordinated services for children and adults with mental and behavioral health disorders. The League also supports state and local policies and programs that provide the opportunity for persons with mental and behavioral health disorders to achieve optimal management of their illness. We specifically support early and appropriate diagnosis and treatment for children and adolescents that's family-focused and community-based. In 2018, according to the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services, the suicide rate for children was 7.9 per 100,000. The suicide rate was higher for Native American youth and Asian youth. Nationally, rates of reported suicidal ideation and thoughts of self-harm have greatly increased, up 45% in 2021 compared to 2019. Rates of other mental illnesses have similarly increased in children following the first few years of the COVID-19 pandemic. In Nebraska, Children's Hospital and Medical Center reported month-to-month increases in positive screenings for depression in ranges of 5 to 15%. Boys Town National Research Hospital saw an increase of more than 50% of children reporting anxiety between 2020 and 2022. It's evident that even before the pandemic, children in Nebraska would benefit from more attention to mental health issues. Following the disruption of the pandemic, children are still struggling to adjust to in-person schooling and are having behavioral problems that may relate to mental health issues. LB 585 would aid children and families in Nebraska that are struggling with mental illness. Training each employee who interacts with students will increase the chance of identifying youth who are struggling and need outside support. Adding a provision for training on trauma-informed care will broaden the understanding of student sources of mental and behavioral problems. Procedures to provide information on services and supports for behavioral and mental health issues to families will make the safety program more effective. For all these reasons, the League of Women Voters of Nebraska supports LB 585 and urges the Education Committee to advance it to the floor for debate. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly, any questions? Ms. Kelly? Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairperson Merman and members of the Education Committee. My name is Anahi Salazar, Anahisalazar, and I am representing Voices for Children in Nebraska. Over the course of the last few years, Nebraska schools have increasingly held a safe and significant space for students. School personnel have not only taught academics or provided resources for food and housing, but they have also expanded their roles to provide access to mental and behavioral health support. Voices for Children supports LB 585 because it will help prepare all employees interacting with students with valuable and life-saving training regarding mental and behavioral health. We are facing a mental health crisis, and promoting greater awareness and early identification of behavior and mental health signs can help determine how and when to provide students with the responsive care they need. When mental and behavioral health goes undiagnosed, untreated, or inadequately treated, it can impact the student's ability to learn, grow, and develop. It is estimated that 1 in 10 Nebraska children have been diagnosed with a mental or behavioral health condition needing treatment. According to the estimates by the Nebraska Survey of Children's Health, anxiety, attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and depression are the most prevalent disorders among Nebraska children and youth. With the proper training, school personnel can help children and young people stay in school, thrive, and achieve their life goals. LB 585 equips school personnel with training focusing on suicide awareness and prevention. This is especially important as such trainings can help prevent tragic events. School personnel interact with students daily to help build rapport to students so students can feel safe and comfortable in school. Training and identifying early and mental health warning signs and symptoms can better inform school personnel on how and when to intervene. Equipping schools with trauma-informed care and support is another important component. As cases may arise, educators and other school personnel can structure a response that is best supportive to the student and their family. LB 585 would ensure that all Nebraska school personnel have training to better support their students and their families when it comes to mental and behavioral health. And we thank Senator Hughes for bringing this important issue forward. We respectfully urge the committee to advance 585, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hansler. Any questions? Yes, Senator Conrad.
Hello, thank you so much, Chairman Merman. Good to see you again, Ms. Salazar. I know before you joined Voices for Children, you were also a classroom teacher. I just wanted to ask you about your experience with some of these trainings, if you felt it was too prescriptive or redundant, or how it fit in with some of the other professional development requirements we put on our frontline teachers.
Yes, that's a great question. I was a former educator in elementary school setting, and the trainings that are required were pretty prescriptive. There were video, you answered questions. We were a pretty high-risk school, so we had additional training as educators. Our school psychologists were really helpful in navigating these tough situations with students and families. Our social worker, our counselors were really supportive in that role. And even in an elementary age, it was very evident that students really needed that additional support, and families that had a lot of questions on how to better help their children. So schools are definitely a site for not only student intervention, but also family support. So, and as early as elementary school age. So it's definitely needed.
Very good. Thank you. And I should have asked Ms. Rasmussen while she was in the chair, but I can also follow up with her later because I, yes, know exactly where she lives, not in a creepy way, but from a canvassing kind of way. And she's been a longtime member of my teacher team and representing those frontline concerns. So, but the other thing is, so once you have the training about like how to identify the warning signs, so to speak, or the red flags that you might be seeing from a vulnerable student, like what does the training then kind of teach you to do? Is it to alert the mental health professionals in the building? Is it to reach out to families? Like once you identify those initial warning signs, what does the training kind of direct you to do next to address it? I'm just unfamiliar with the process.
The training that we like our training. I believe
if you remember, it may have been a while. So yes, right.
I believe the first thing that we always took into consideration was keeping the child safe or the student safe. So making sure we were in proximity of them, making sure they were safe within any school spaces they were going into. But in the training, it was just asking the closest person that had that extra training, so the social worker, the school psychologist, or the counselor, to come in and help in supporting the student. So that was like the initial step, is keeping the child safe and then alerting the other school personnel that could better help with the interventions and the support.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Sarah Linehan.
Thank you, Chairman Merman. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. You said you were at a high-risk school. Could you define that?
A school that had a lot of incidents with students that were experiencing mental and behavioral health challenges. So in my time I constantly had to, or not constantly, but would reach out to the school psychologist, the counselor, and the social worker for additional support.
So there's not like a definition. It's just your experiences in life.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Salazar. Sorry, I didn't get your name right earlier.
That's okay. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, thank
Senator Chairperson Merman and members of the Education Committee, my name is Kyle McGowan, KYLEMCGOWAN. Today I'm representing the Nebraska Council of School Administrators, NERCSA, and the ESUCC, which is the Educational Service Units Coordinating Council. We would like to thank Senator Hughes. Her language in 585 provides some efficiency and clarity as we strive for our number one goal of keeping students safe. Behavioral mental health training for educators is very important. We see all the students, our teachers, our administrators, our staff certainly have the opportunity to help and try to get students additional help. This bill allows some flexibility in finding the appropriate training for the different employees that are in the school. We like the local control part of it, and we think it will help make students safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan. Any questions? Thank you very much. Any other proponents for LB 585?
Good morning.
Good
My
morning.
name is Rose Godinez, spelled ROSEGODINEZ, and I'm here to testify on behalf of the ACLU of Nebraska in favor of LB 585. First, we'd like to thank Senator Hughes for introducing this bill. At the ACLU, we support equal access to educational opportunities for people with disabilities and continue to challenge the school to prison pipeline, which continues to disproportionately affect students with disabilities. LB 585 expands the current requirement of behavioral and mental health training to include all public school employees. We wholeheartedly support this measure as it reflects the legislature's intent to invest in supportive resources to establish a holistic response to student behavior needs rather than one of punishment. Generally, the state and the schools need to invest more in these measures and invest more in counselors, social workers, and psychologists. In 2019, and I know I've said this before this committee, but I'll just reiterate, we published a report on the lack of counselors across the country called Cops and No Counselors, How the Lack of School Mental Health Staff is Harming Students. Our organization also studied Nebraska, and in Nebraska, approximately 4,212 or 1.3% of our students are attending a school with a police officer but no counselor. We are also not meeting the recommended ratio of students to social workers or to psychologists. The recommended ratio for students to counselors is 250 students to 1 counselor. We have 347 students to 1 counselor. The recommended ratio for social workers is 250 to 1 social worker. We have 3,350 students to 1 social worker. The recommended ratio for psychologists is 700 to 1, and we have 1,164 to 1. Additionally, I just wanted to touch on a case. We filed a suit against a public school staff member, and I know there were questions of whether school staff are taking this kind of training. In that case, our clients alleged that the school staff member punched our client. And throughout discovery, we discovered that there was no de-escalation training required or taken. With that, we not only urge the legislature to support Nebraska public school staff in participating in behavioral and mental health training by advancing this bill, but also further invest in school grounds mental health services. For those reasons, we urge you to advance this bill to general file. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you mind spelling your last name?
Oh yeah, Godinez.
I-N-D-E?
I-N-E-Z.
E-E?
G-O-D like God, I-N as in Nancy, E-Z as in zebra.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions for Miss Godinez?
Godinez.
Yeah, Senator Conrad.
Thank you, Senator Merman. Thank you. Good to see you, Rose. I really appreciate you broadening the lens and helping to connect the dots with this important measure and some of the other policy proposals before this committee and the legislature as a whole when it comes to addressing our mental health crises. And, you know, that's a part of what my thought process was when Senator Hughes was doing her opening. And I remember when Senator McGill brought this measure forward. You know, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, and if not, we can look it up or I can Google around and see if I can find it. But I remember when this measure was first brought forward, at that point, Nebraska was at the top of one of those lists you don't want to be at the top of, where we were, I think, perhaps leading the country for, as a leading cause of death for young people dying by suicide. For certain age brackets, number 1, I think, and other age brackets in the early teens, number 2 in the country. And I think that was, along with some other, you know, high profile incidents, kind of the impetus for that initial work that now Senator Hughes is trying to build upon and expand and amend. Do you happen to know generally where Nebraska is kind of in terms of those rankings? And if not, I can follow up afterwards or see if we can find that.
I do not, but I can find that for you in the committee. Okay. And that the only thing I would highlight is that mental health in general across the country is worsening. I don't have the exact measure of where Nebraska lies, but for students generally, it is just because of cyberbullying and bullying generally in school, as far as what I've researched. But I will get that measure.
Yes, that's very helpful. I've also read a fair amount of research about how the isolation during the pandemic and some of those social dynamics have also really, I think, really negatively impacted young people's mental health and all of our mental health kind of collectively as well. So there's kind of those lingering effects that we need to deal with as well. And then, you know, just the last piece in trying to make sure that we really do connect the dots, right? And thinking about, like, you know, the governor's budget proposal has essentially like flat rates for mental health providers. And we're already seeing, a lack of access to mental health providers, especially in rural Nebraska, and like trying to figure out like this is an important piece of the puzzle, but we can't take our eye off of kind of the broader network of policy choices to address a severe mental health crisis. So I thank you for helping us to broaden the lens. And if you have any updated stats on where Nebraska is today, I'll keep looking too. But I figured that you might have that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Rose? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other proponents?
Hi there. I am Brandon Benson, BRANDONBENSON. Some of you know me. I work for a senator here. I am here on my own behalf. I had no intention of speaking on this, but as someone that was undiagnosed bipolar until age 38, anytime we can talk about these issues, I've always made it a point that I would. From about age 15, is probably when I had the onset of that. And for all those years, nearly every other day, I would wake up. The first thought to start my day would be, today's the day to die. I don't know how I made it, but I have. I'm here, and I think about resources that we can give our youth, and how many more people like me could be in positions that, that I am in today. That'd be great. So anytime that we can talk about flexibility and resources and getting those to our youth, I think that's a great thing. You'll all figure this out. I'm confident that you will, and figure out a great solution to go forward. And all these matters that pertain to, youth and mental health. It's something that's really on my heart, and just wanted to share that with you all. So thank you.
Yes, any questions? Yes, Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Senator Merman. I just wanted to thank you for sharing your personal lived experiences. I think it's very brave, and I think it's very important to, removing some of the stigma around mental health and making sure that we, are really clear and full-throated in addressing these multifaceted crises. And it's kind of, for me, I think it's always helpful to have both the data points and the rankings
Absolutely.
and all of that information, but also kind of marry that to the personal experience and understanding kind of how that really impacts people's daily lives. And I think your testimony today really helped to kind of round out the picture for the committee, which we really, really appreciate. And I'm sure it just took a lot of courage to come up and share that. And I just wanted to thank you.
Things like these are difficult for me.
Yeah, they are.
So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And we're glad you're here.
Just a second. Any other questions? I have one. You
got me here. Let's go, Senator.
All right.
And I want to thank you also for your bravery coming in and testifying. We need more training in the schools for mental health. I think we can probably all agree with that. Any specific ideas on, we're talking about, broad-based training for, I think, all school employees. Any ideas on how that can be improved?
Yeah, that's a great question. I graduated high school in 1997, so we've made progress. Things back then were so different than what they are today, just with awareness. So, back then, my thought, my head was just that everybody must deal with this. Everybody must go through this. Everyone else just must be better at life than I am. So I think we've made lots of leaps in these, 20, 30 years now that, where we weren't talking about it then. And So I think that sets us up for, what you're talking about, getting into specifics. I don't know, that's a great question, what specifically we could do, but I'm sure all these experts have better ideas on what we can do.
Well, I think actually you're a real expert. I mean, you lived through it, so.
All right.
So appreciate that, but appreciate you coming in.
All right.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Any other proponents? Any opponents for LB 585? Anyone wish to testify in a neutral position? If not, Senator Hughes, you're welcome to close.
Kind of an emotional topic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I want to especially thank Senator McGill Johnson, making suicide awareness and prevention training a focus for our educators, administrators, and school staff. And I also want to thank her for her excellent testimony regarding LB 585. A couple of questions that I heard that I just want to address as well. The required training is a minimum of 1 hour. Senator Breezy, you'd ask that. So a school could definitely do more if they saw necessary. And I think we had a prior educator that kind of attested to that fact. So our schools are the front line, right? They're seeing these students every day. They see the issues that they're dealing with. I can't imagine East, what they're going through if this is the third this year. So they're hopefully kind of seeing what those things are and can help address their training appropriately. To Senator Albright's question of, she questioned the list of people. The list originally was very specific and could leave someone out. And so we decided to make it, people that have, work with students. And then the key is as determined by the superintendent. So the superintendent can say, this person would need that training, or maybe this person wouldn't. I think sometimes when you list, then it almost becomes, well, I'm not on that list, so I don't need to take it. Well, maybe I'm hired by the school as a security guard, and maybe that's the front line. Those they're seeing the kids first thing they walk in the door, and maybe they need that. So this just gives it back to the school to decide what's going to be best for our students. So LB 585 clarifies the intent of Senator McGill Johnson's original legislation and ensures that the staff that interact with the students will receive this training. LB 585 also positions our schools to better provide a greater scope of training covering a broader spectrum of behavioral and mental health that contribute to the suicide in our youth. Suicide awareness and prevention is clearly a critical issue, and I urge the Education Committee to report LB 585 favorably to the general file so that this critical training can continue in an improved and more effective way. Thank you guys so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. Any questions? Senator Linehan.
Thank you, Chairman Merman. So this is all wonderful, greater scope. Who provides the training materials? Is that just up to the schools or?
So right now it has to be approved, and I can follow up with this, make sure, but through the Board of Education.
The state board.
Right.
Okay, so there'd be somebody kind of guiding it.
Yes, that would say
professionals.
these are kind of the parameters,
Okay.
but it'll just expand those parameters. So
Okay.
right now it's very limited on what the choices
but
are.
every school wouldn't be able to go out and create their own program.
No, that,
Okay.
we don't, no. That would be a really big unfunded mandate, Senator Linehan, and we don't want to go there, so.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate
Yes.
it.
Do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Senator Merman. Senator Hughes, thank you for bringing this bill forward. It's a great discussion to have, and it's important and emotional. I did not see a fiscal note. Is there a change in the fiscal note or any idea?
We don't have one, but I am going to call the newbie card on this. I don't know that there is one. Let me check, but does that, I don't know. I don't even know.
Thank you. If you have that
Sorry.
information, it's okay.
Me and my LA are new this year, so I don't think it will, but.
Thank you again for bringing this bill forward.
Senator Conrad.
Thank you so much, Chair Merman. And also welcome to the Education Committee. It's good to see you, Senator
good to be here.
Hughes. I think that you've brought forward a really important measure, and I'm always trying to connect the dots with other aspects of our work that are out there. I know Senator Frederickson's working with Senator Brewer on providing like a suicide prevention pamphlet at point of sale for gun purchases is kind of like another touch point to get information into the hands of people who might really need it, as kind of another like smaller piece in the puzzle there. But I do really want to think through, and I know you probably addressed some of these issues during your tenure on the Seward School Board and otherwise, but we know, for example, that bullying and things of that nature really hurt our LGBTQ youth across the state and in our schools. And we see a higher incidence of suicide, suicidal ideation and suicide for LGBTQ youth across the state and in our school districts. And so, well, I think it's really important that we destigmatize mental health and provide training and resources. I think we also have to be really careful as a legislature when we pursue policies that target LGBTQ youth and hurt their mental health, when we use the power and prestige of our offices to exacerbate a problem. So I don't know if you've thought about this measure in context with, providing any sort of additional information or training for some of the youth that are most vulnerable, but just wanted to give you a chance to respond to that. And I'm sorry, I texted you before. I didn't give you, I normally like to try and give people a heads up on it, but it was just something that came up as we were thinking, and I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to have a pre-conversation about it, but just if you have some ideas, if not, we can continue the conversation later. And
I think to your point, that also is why what's kind of nice about this is you are leaving it, I'm a full believer, right, in local control. And so if you have a school that is seeing specific accounts, bullying, whatnot happening, then that year's training can be targeted to that. And so I think that's why just that one size fits all shoe doesn't work. Because I've used this example when I was on the campaign trail, right? What is good for OPS maybe is not good for Cross County public schools. Each one has to see what is going on in that building, in that system, and address it appropriately. And I feel like this just gives a little bit more to those administrators in those situations to pick and choose what will work for their population. Because definitely what's happening in one area may be very different than the other. Fiscal note is zero cost.
All right, very good. See, look at that. That helpful question got you a chance to clarify the record. Appreciate Senator Conrad. No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Senator.
Yes, absolutely.
Any other questions for Senator Hughes? If not, thank you very much.
All right, awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Good to see you.
So that'll close the hearing on LB 585, and we will open the hearing for LB 520.
They're already doing it. They're just saying they can do more. They're already doing it. They're saying they can do
Pay over time,
Yes, go ahead, Senator Walls.
Good morning, Chairman Merman and fellow members of the Education Committee. My name is Lynn Walls, Lynnewalz, and I represent District 15, which is made up of Dodge County and Valley. Today, I'm introducing LB 520, which amends the Computer Science and Technology Education Act that was established in LB 1112 last year. LB 1112 was introduced last session as a way to address the tech talent workforce crisis. This bill was to afford public school students the opportunity to access and learn critical computer science and digital literacy fundamentals during early and secondary education. I fully support the idea of this bill, ensuring that our public school students are prepared for what the future holds. However, as many of you know who sat on this committee last year, and you might remember, I did have some reservations about how schools would be able to comply in the time frame given. This concern was mainly rooted in the fact that schools may not have enough time to hire and train staff and inadvertently affect Nebraska students from graduating. This bill is to address those concerns, and I have been working with schools across the state to get this bill to where it is today. Last year, LB 1112 established that this graduation requirement would begin in the school year 2026 to 2027. LB 520 moves the graduation timeframe to 2027, 2028 school year. LB 1112 last year also required that the State Board of Education shall adopt measurable academic content standards for computer science and technology education under the mathematics, science, or career and technical education standards. However, it did not give a deadline, so this bill states that it needs to be done on or before March 1st, 2024. Additionally, this bill changes the requirement that this be a 5 credit hour high school course. The change broadens the definition that the 5 credit hours may be met by a single course or a combination of high school courses that cover the computer science and technology academic content standards. For example, at Bellevue Public Schools, there are several classes that would fall under the original act. AP Computer Science, Introduction to Computer Science, or Cisco A+ PC hardware class that deals with networking, cybersecurity, and customer service. However, none of those classes currently fall under the act. Students with different abilities should be able to take classes that match their needs. Finally, this just moves the annual status report from 2025 to 2026. Currently our schools are already having a hard time hiring staff. While this is an important step to ensuring that our students are prepared for the future, we also have to ensure that this is feasible and that it is successful across the state. Every school district is diverse with an array of different needs. Extending this deadline and the course requirement gives our schools more time to ensure that it can be carried out effectively. I'd like to thank the Department of Education for their help in crafting the legislation, as well as the business community for their input and support. LB 1112 sets an important goal for our state. LB 520 makes that goal more achievable for our students and our teachers. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Senator Walls? Senator Linehan.
Thank you, Senator Merman. Thank you, Senator Wells, for bringing this bill. On the page 4, in line 9 and 10, is there a reason that we strike, or the bill strikes, that is tailored to meet the need of each participating student?
Page 4, what?
I'm sorry, it starts in line 9 and line 10. It strikes that is tailored to meet the need of each participating student. Is there a reason that's struck?
I don't know for sure, Senator Linehan. Let me find out.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Any other questions this time? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any proponents for LB 520?
Good morning, Chairman Merman and members of the Education Committee. My name is Mike Castling, Mikecassling. I'm here to testify in support of LB 512 or 520. As a background, I'm CEO of Sequence Health Group, a health tech company founded in 1984 based in Omaha. I'm also governor of Exarban, which is a statewide business-led organization that really is focused on how do we fix the workforce crisis that we face today and into the future. Last year, Senators McKinney and Slama introduced LB 1112 on behalf of the Nebraska Tech Collaborative, Omaha Chamber, Lincoln Chamber, State Chamber, and business across the state. This legislation, as Senator Walls said, created the Computer Science and Education Act to help drive tech talent workforce in preparing our kids, K through 12, for the future of the 21st century workforce. This is a key piece of what we need, and thank you for those on the Education Committee and the 31 other senators that voted in support of this LB 1112. As I think you all know, we have a workforce crisis in this state. As of December 2022, we have 50,000 openings with only 5,000 people looking that are unemployed. These are across the board, not just technology. But technology jobs are the highest paying, most desirable, and go unfilled or are advertised in other states and leave our state. I believe, and so does the business community, every student in every school across the state should be exposed to computer science and technology classes and made aware of the diverse employment opportunities it creates. Technology education is as important as reading, writing, and mathematics. These jobs are in every industry across the state, whether it's manufacturing as they go to robotics, agriculture as it goes to ag tech, finance, insurance, and healthcare. These jobs are also based in every sector across the state, from Omaha to Lincoln, Grand Island, Broken Bow, Chadron, Norfolk, and so forth. The business community feels this is absolutely critical. We see in the next 5 years that there's going to be 10,000 open jobs in the tech sector. The problem is, if we do not fix this problem today and start dealing with this, businesses are going to continue to open offices in other states or leave the state altogether. This bill was based off the success of in Arkansas, where they went from 1,100 kids to 1,300 kids in computer science, 294 women to 3,900 women in this space, 600 people of color to 5,200 people of color. So we know this can be a success. We did create, and we've worked ever since as a partnership with the Department of Education, Senator Walz, to ensure that we're partnering with, the business community is partnering with them to make sure this is a success. One thing COVID taught us is we can connect with anybody across the state. And this bill gives us a lot of flexibility in order to allow the students and the schools, whether it's in-person, hybrid, or online, to create this programming. Up next will be the new Executive Director of Nebraska Tech Collaborative, Shauna Dorsey, who is a resource to you as a committee, Department of Education, as well as the schools across the state. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Kessling. Any questions? Senator Linehan.
Thank you, Chairman Merman. Thank you very much, Mr. Kessling, for being here today and bringing this as a proponent. Can you re-go over these bullets again that you talked about from Governor Hutchinson in Arkansas?
Sure.
Just read them again, because I think you read one wrong. So for the
I did? Whoops. Okay. Sorry about that. I saw my lights turning over, so I was getting nervous.
So we got it in the record.
So they started out with 1,100 kids in computer science, and that moved to 13,000 kids. 294 women moved to 3,900 women in the space of computer science. 600 people of color to 5,200 people of color in this space, and 20 computer science teachers to over 600. So the bill is a huge success.
Do you know how they managed to go from 20 computer science teachers to over 600? Did they have to go back, and did they furnish them money to get it?
There was money for that segment involved in Arkansas, yes.
Okay.
But what we've tried to do here is give flexibility to not just have teachers in the schools across the state, but be able to use the community colleges, the universities who are all standing by, and the business community to support those teachers with the support, so they can be there, but you'd have the expertise from the business community of the universities and community colleges.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any other questions for Mr. Kessling? If not,
thank you
very much.
I'm back. Good morning, Senators. My name is Stephanie Howell, STEPHANIEHOWELL, and I'm here today to speak in support of LB 520. Thank you for this opportunity this morning. I've been an educator in Nebraska for 16 years. During my tenure as a high school teacher, I've seen graduation requirements expand. However, up until recently, there have not been any requirements for financial literacy education, along with computer science technology education for our graduating high school students. As a teacher, I've had numerous conversations with graduating seniors over the years about finances and planning for their future. What has stuck with me through all these years is how ill-prepared these young adults are for the financial decisions they will have to make as they venture into the world after high school.
We have a responsibility to fully educate and prepare our young people about the realities of the world they will be entering, and this includes financial literacy. Being financially literate will also create more informed voters, as many of the civic decisions voters make revolve around the financial effect that policies will have. Financial literacy helps empower students to create personal wealth, which in turn will have an impact on future generations. As for computer science and technology education, many of the high demand jobs in today's world have been created in the last decade. And as the advances in technology drive globalization and digital transformation, teachers can help students acquire the necessary skills to succeed in the careers of the future. The goal of computer science education is to develop computational thinking skills, which refer to the thought processes involved in expressing solutions as computational steps or algorithms that can be carried out by a computer. And that was according to K-12 Computer Science Framework Steering Committee in 2016. Computer science education is also distinct from computer or digital literacy in that it is more concerned with computer design than with computer use. For example, coding is a skill one would learn in a computer science course, while creating a document or slideshow presentation using an existing program is a skill one would learn in a computer or digital literacy course. Computer science technology education is vital for students living in the 21st century. A functional knowledge of how computers work will help all students. As a teacher at the Career Academy in Lincoln, I get to see students in our programming and networking pathways do some amazing things. In fact, just this last week, I was able to sit in on senior capstone project presentations, and the ideas that were coming from these students was astounding. I can tell you our future is bright, and if we focus on including a computer science and technology graduation requirement, we will have students who will be change makers for the world. In fact, it was a Career Academy IT student who helped develop the MyLNK app many years ago that is still in use by many today. Career Academy students are not required to have computer science technology experience, but can you only imagine what students would be able to do if they were? Please advance LB 520. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Howell. Any questions? If not, thank you very much. Any other proponents? Good morning.
Good morning. Yes. Okay. Good morning, Chairman Merman, members of the Education Committee. My name is Lashana Dorsey. That's spelled Lashonadorcey. And I'm here to speak in support of LB 520. As Mike Castling stated, and I'd like to reiterate, thank you to Senator McKinney along with Senator Slama for originally supporting LB 1112, along with 31 senators who voted in favor of this legislation last session. And thank you to all the senators on this committee for your service to the state as well as your time today. I'm currently the executive director of the Nebraska Tech Collaborative and Exarban Workforce Initiative. For the past 20 years, I've worked in a variety of tech and tech adjacent roles, including an entry-level job on a help desk as an intern, through experience roles including an IT project manager, technical resource manager, co-founder of a startup focused on helping adults transition into tech careers that was based in Nebraska as well. As an enabler, tech careers present three of the biggest opportunities before us, including raising the average annual salaries of individuals in our state, which will lead to greater economic prosperity for Nebraska families and the communities they live in, increasing diverse representation throughout the state in tech, and also creating a workforce that is prepared for the future and who then stay here to work for and or build new companies. One of the goals of the Nebraska Tech Collaborative is to work with businesses, educators, and other workforce partners to help the state fill 10,000 tech jobs by 2025. Based on the low number of students currently enrolled in computer science and related degree programs and graduating from those programs and then deciding to stay in the state, we are not filling the talent pipeline quickly enough. If we want to keep talent in Nebraska and help Nebraska-based companies fill the high demand, high skilled, and high paid or H3 jobs, computer science education must be a part of the essential skills taught to students as soon as possible in their academic careers. As of 2021, and according to data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average annual salary for all jobs in the state of Nebraska is $54,000. Average salary for retail jobs is $37,000, and the average pay for tech jobs was approximately $80,000, which represents a huge opportunity. Please note that tech jobs are in all industries, including agriculture, insurance, finance, healthcare, and many employers in these spaces are right in our state. Finally, with advancements in diversity, equity, and inclusion in Nebraska being important to all of us, along with the low rate of diverse tech talent currently in tech jobs, we're at approximately 22% Asian, 12% Hispanic, and 5% Black across the entire country. There's an incredible opportunity for us to work together to increase diversity in the tech workforce, starting with K through 12. Again, this will improve outcomes for families throughout our state. We will not see the fruits of these efforts right away, but it's a critical investment as companies continue to struggle to recruit and retain diverse tech talent from outside of the state to move to Nebraska. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Dorsey? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good
Morning. Morning, Chairperson Merman and members of the Education Committee. My name is Jason Buckingham, Jason Buckingham. I'm an Assistant Superintendent for the Ralston Public Schools. I testify today on behalf of the Ralston Public Schools, and I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you to speak in support of LB 520. First, we greatly appreciate Senator Walls and her submission of LB 520. This bill provides much needed clarification for 793304, the Computer Science and Technology Education Statute. LB 520 is written allows the local school district to have discretion in how it chooses to incorporate the concepts listed in 793304 into existing curriculum. As is currently interpreted, 793304 requires a school district to add a separate standalone class to teach computer science and technology. The course must become a requirement for graduation for every public school student in the state. We do not oppose the teaching of computer science or technology, far from it. In practice, we currently have most of the components required in 793304 taught in existing coursework. For example, we incorporate the standard of computer literacy into several of our existing courses at the elementary, middle, and high school level. We also have embedded digital citizenship in several places in our curriculum. One of the many concerns we have relates to the change in graduation requirements. Currently, we require 240 credits to graduate. Out of those 240, 180 are required classes such as English, math, science, and social studies. The remaining elective credits we view as an opportunity for students to explore different interests and aptitudes they may have. Adding the computer technology skills class as a separate standalone graduation requirement further erodes the ability of our students to take the courses they desire. This may impact their ability to either concentrate their studies in areas of career training, or it may take away their ability to take another course as an exploratory. Either way, restricting the choice of students to take a course based on information they may have already received in other coursework is restrictive and counterproductive. The benefit of LB 520 is that it allows school districts to assess if they need a separate class or if they're already meeting the standards in existing coursework. Another significant issue is the availability of educators to teach the class. The Nebraska Department of Education requires teachers be endorsed in either business, marketing, information technology, or math to be licensed to teach this class. I can tell you from experience that shortages of teachers exist in all these endorsement areas. The teachers we have with these endorsements are currently teaching at full capacity and have no room in their schedule to add this class as a requirement. With shortages existing already, it doesn't take much of an imagination to see that the requirements of 793304 have a devastating effect on the ability of school districts to hire anyone in these endorsement areas. In a district of 3,500 like mine, we'd need to hire at least a 0.7 FTE person to teach the class. This also requires an additional financial commitment for the district to pay additional staff, or it would require a district to offer less elective courses in order to meet this new requirement. As a supplement, in the last page that you have on there, this is directly from the study that NDE did on the shortage of teachers. This is from the 22-23 year. So if you look specifically down on the second line, BMIT, that's business marketing, info technology. Take that across, you can see that statewide we had 21.25 FTE unfilled. If you go down to math, the other endorsement area, you can see that we had a total statewide of 46.93 FTE unfilled. So I know I'm out of time here, but I did want to explain the data that included in this testimony.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Buckingham? Senator Linehan.
Thank you, Chairman Merman. So will there still, so you can do it in different courses, it's embedded in different courses, but how will we know that it's really happening?
I think the state still is going to gather information on those requirements. We'll still have standards that we'll have to teach.
Okay, so there's still going to be.
We'll still be accountable for teaching those standards.
Okay, because the Department of Ed will require you to turn in.
And they've already developed those standards. Their interpretation as it's written now is it has to be either a separate standalone class, or it has to be a class that we offer as one that they could take online.
So you're thinking this bill will enable them to rewrite it so it can include your course?
That would allow us to embed it in the courses we're already teaching at our school. Now, this does not prevent other districts from making a separate standalone graduation requirement in a separate class. They certainly could do that too. In our model, at least in our school, we already embed a lot of this in existing coursework.
So are the teachers that are doing the existing coursework, do they have these certificates they need?
Most of them do not.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
But I just to follow up on that, I don't know that you'd have to have math or info technology endorsement to teach digital citizenship as an example. I don't know that one would be specific to those endorsements.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Senator Conrad.
Thank you, Chair Merman. Thank you, Mr. Buckingham.
morning.
Good morning. Just wanted to make sure I have an understanding of this because I wasn't closely involved with Senator Slama and Senator McKinney's legislation when it moved through in the previous biennium. I kind of remember hearing some of the debate or reading some of the news stories about it. So what I'm trying to understand, and maybe we can follow up with Senator Walls as well. I mean, it happens frequently. For example, if the legislature passes something that maybe we need to come back and address unintended consequences or provide a longer runway for implementation. It seems to me that's kind of at the heart of 520 is maybe just a little bit of cleanup and maybe extending some of the hard deadlines that were in the original legislation. Is that an oversimplification?
We'd certainly be in support of that too. I mean, if NDE comes out and they have requirements that we have to teach this course as a graduate, we're going to figure it out on our end of it. What it may end up being, and I don't know if I was specific enough in this, if I have a shortage of teachers and I only have so many that have the endorsement to teach this class, they're already teaching other courses. We're going to have to roll back on some of those electives we may teach that are already in infotech, or may already be in a personal finance class, or maybe in accounting, or maybe in some of those other areas in order to free up space to teach a requirement. So that's a concern that we have too, that we may limit the options of kids to be able to explore some of those other areas. Math is even harder. If I had to pull a math teacher out to teach this course, it's required. I don't want to take my class sizes from 28 up to 35 in order to meet that requirement.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that is helpful because I'm just trying to kind of balance between, yes, we want to make sure that implementation goes smoothly and that people have the opportunity to be in compliance with a long enough runway. But I also, like on the other hand of it, want to make sure that we're not undermining the will and intent of the legislature that said we want this to be a focus of the curriculum and we want it to be done at this time for these reasons. So I'm just kind of trying to work through those different sides of the scales to find the right balance there.
And we're not against having this as a requirement in there. It's just how it's done is pretty important, particularly when you look at the teacher shortage we have currently.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Senator Breeze.
Chairman Mermer, thank you for your testimony here today. In your testimony, you say you currently have most of the requirements of 793304 already in existing coursework. So this bill passes, you're not going to have to do much difference?
Well, the problem is we don't have a separate standalone class, which is a requirement of the bill.
Right.
So for us, we would have to create a whole different graduation requirement, which we're prepared to do. We've already got the board action to change for the incoming freshmen for next year to do that. That has repercussions. And again, it cuts back one more elective that a student could take. It also is going to require a full-time person to move out of, well, close to a full-time person, to move out of the class that they're teaching existing and move into teaching this class solely.
You're essentially meeting the requirements of LB 520 now.
Correct.
Okay. So are you completely confident that LB 520 wouldn't lessen the beneficial impact of 793304?
I don't think it would for us. Now, we would have some work to do on our end to make sure that we met every requirement that 793304 has. There are a couple components that we may not be meeting currently in coursework, and we would have to address that on our end. But we would make sure that we met NDE's requirements for that statute.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Senator Merman and members of the Education Committee. My name is Jack Moles. That's JACKMOLES. I'm Executive Director of the Nebraska Rural Community Schools Association. On behalf of NERCS, I'd like to voice our support for LB 520. We thank Senator Walz for introducing this bill, which recognizes some of the work already being done in schools in the area of computer science and technology education. Many of our schools today are one-to-one schools. That means every student has their own device. And in these schools, many of the technology skills are being acquired during different classes, not in just a single class. Being required to provide instruction in these classes in one class would likely cause much unneeded replication. For this purpose, LB 520 makes a great deal of sense in meeting the intent of the original law. And I'm going to cloud the issue a little bit, but I'd like to bring up the idea, maybe something you could consider also. What we'd recommend is that a one full semester class at the middle school level be allowed to cover this. And the reason for this is, in talking to many of our schools, in the middle school, they have what they call rotational classes or enrichment classes or electives. And in these, the schools offer many different things. So, for example, art, computer technology, keyboarding, personal finance, industrial technology. The reason they do this is to offer the students a glimpse of what interests may be available to them in high school. A couple of schools I talked to said they actually have in the middle school a coding class also, which would be within the realm of this. If our suggestion would be adopted, of course, we'd say that the class needs to be a full semester class. Many of the rotational classes are maybe 6 weeks in length or 9 weeks in length. If you were to go down to the middle school, it would need to be a full semester class. We appreciate Senator Walz's desire to recognize that many schools have several offerings that could enable them to meet the requirements of the law. LB 520 would recognize those schools' efforts, and we're excited for this opportunity to improve on LB 1112 from last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moles. Any questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning again, Chairperson Merman and members of the Education Committee. My name is Kyle McGowan, KYLEMCGOWAN. And just to get to the point, we do thank Senator Walz for clarifying some of the language here. Senator Conrad had mentioned, does this essentially lengthen the runway? You heard, and you already know, there's a teacher shortage. Computer science is particularly a shortage. We see this as giving a year to get prepared to implement what the legislature had intended. It does also state in here, the State Board of Education must have measurable content standards for computer science and technology by March 1st, 2024. Each school district then must adopt those content standards by 25-26. And it does allow some flexibility that you could have one 5-hour credit class for graduation, or you could have a combination of classes to meet that. So again, we think it's clarifying and gives us a better opportunity to implement what was intended. That's it.
Any questions for Mr. McGowan? Senator Breezy.
Thank you, Chairman Murray. Thank you for your testimony here today. So the schools are basically saying, we're already doing this. We don't need that standalone class that 79-3304 seems to require.
I would put a caveat to that. Okay, I think there's some schools, particularly in the eastern part of the state, have more opportunity that have been offering more classes. I think that schools across Nebraska for many years now have been moving to be having students and teachers more literate with technology. But the intent that we heard from Senator McKinney was an extra level of computer literacy. And so I think that's what we're trying to implement. So the foundation, I think Nebraska schools are in pretty good shape. But I think the intent was to move to a higher level for a graduation requirement.
I think I heard someone talk about or complain about the possibility of replication, things of that sort. Replication is not necessarily a bad thing. Is it?
We're always complaining, Senator. Okay, so
But anyway, no.
yeah, replication, again, any topic, it's how deep you want to get into it. So to make sure that we're raising the minimum expectation for Nebraska graduates, I think was the purpose. I think there's schools already meeting that now and going way beyond. And then I think there's some other schools that might have to raise their game.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Lindenham.
Thank you, Chairman Merman, and thank you, Mr. McGowan, for being here today. I'm trying to remember the hearing a year ago. I think it was just a year ago. Weren't there people, wasn't there a group here that said they could provide these classes online free of charge?
That they could provide them online?
Well, I guess I'm asking this, hoping somebody will remember. It seems to me there was a group that came in, they were already doing some work where they could provide online classes, which means they could go to any school in the state, and there wasn't a charge or minimum charge. Do you remember? You don't remember? It's fine.
I don't remember.
I'm really not asking you, I'm asking everybody.
Well, I don't think there's anything that you can't get online, especially for a price. And there are access to a lot of good quality curriculum too that's online free of charge too. I in a required class, it would have to certainly meet the standards that and content standards that NDE states. And that's what, part of this is NDE does have content standards for technology or computer technology. And so in this bill, and this might be going off of the track that you want to, you would have to meet the content standards, and you could do them in a couple different classes rather than just one 5-hour course.
Right, I think Mr. Castling probably's got the answer that I'm looking for, so, but thank you very much, appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Merman. And to follow up on Senator Breezy's question, and maybe Mr. McGowan, you heard me kind of visiting with Mr. Buckingham beforehand, but I'm really hearing kind of two things from some of the educational professionals that are helping us work through the bill today. And on their face, they seem divergent, but of course, two things can be true at the same time. One strain seems to be around, we're already doing this. The other strain seems to be around, we can't possibly do this. So I'm just trying to, and maybe it's because different schools are at different places on that continuum. And I know you represent kind of a broad swath. Can you help me understand?
Yeah, well, I think you're right in terms of different schools might be on different places on their availability, which may be the heart of it. And, the previous testifier talked again about, and I don't know this, but I would guess, 70% of Nebraska schools already have a one-to-one computer per child system in their schools, which already lends itself to having a certain level of technological expertise, right? So that's a foundation, but probably not the expectation that Senator McKinney had for his bill in terms of getting to making sure every Nebraska graduate has a competent level of use of technology, as they continue to be lifelong learners.
Okay, I think that's so helpful and responsive. Thank you. Because I think that's what I'm really struggling with. If the intent of Senator McKinney and the legislature as a whole, which adopted that measure, really was to have a higher minimum, to really move standards up for proficiency and understanding and application, which makes a lot of sense in a digital world, in a global economy. And, I really took to heart Ms. Dorsey's important perspective that it's not just, coding and computer science, but applications in ag and industry. And really everything that we do nowadays. But so I would just be, I'm just trying to kind of think through, how do we not undermine the intent of Senator McKinney's legislation in the last go around, which was saying to Nebraska, the legislature saying to Nebraska schools, we want you to level up. And now it seems like maybe we're just not able to get there.
Oh, I think we're able to get there. I think that the intent of 520 is to give us the time to have our teachers trained.
Okay.
Because I don't think it's feasible to think that we're going to hire all these new computer teachers, right? We're going to have to train existing teachers to be able to teach to that level. So that's a piece. And I also think it's important for NDE to develop what those standards are. Now, I did listen to Senator McKinney last year in his introduction. I think, and I don't want to speak for him, but I interpreted his introduction as talking about making sure all students in Nebraska have this, that level of instruction, and that maybe some students were not getting that.
Okay.
So.
No, that's really helpful. And I'm thinking that in the interim, I need to probably audit some of these courses myself, considering my tech limitations. But no, I really appreciate that.
Well, if
Thank
you
you
can handle
so much.
Netflix and Hulu. And,
Yes, I know. I'm frequently amazed by my young children and their tech savviness. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. McDonald? Thank you very much. Any other proponents? Any opponents for LB 520? Anyone want to testify in a neutral position for 520? If not, Senator Walls, you're welcome to come. And while she's coming up, we had online comments, 3 proponents, no opponents, and no neutral. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Conrad, you are correct. You are not very technically, and neither am I, so you get it. Thank you to all those who came to testify, and thank you, committee members, for taking the time to listen. Again, this is a bill that gives our school more time to comply, and it gives flexibility in the class structure. As Ms. Dorsey stated, their goal is to fill 10,000 tech jobs by 2025, and that's a lofty goal. So implementing computer tech as a graduation requirement is important. I want you to know that I've talked to a lot of educators across the state, and they are pretty darn excited about this opportunity to teach and also to partner with the business community and effectively prepare kids for their future and to meet workforce needs. We're pretty excited to see how this bill initially proposed by Senator McKinney and Senator Slama changes the future for our students, for our economy, and for our state. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Walls. Any questions? Senator Lindsay?
Just one quick one. Thank you, Chairman Merman. Senator Walls, could you get us, I didn't want to ask the schools and put them on the spot, but could you have them provide you some examples of the electives they might have to give up if they had to teach another course?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That'll close the hearing on LB 520. And we will open the hearing on LB 153. Welcome, Senator DeBoer.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chair Merman and members of the Education Committee. My name is Wendy DeBoer, W-E-N-D-Y-D-E-B-O-E-R. I represent Legislative District 10 in Northwest Omaha. Today, I'm introducing to you LB 153, which would adopt the Extraordinary Increase in Special Education Expenditures Act. No good acronym, but that's what it is. Those of you who were on the committee last year may recall, or last biennium, may remember that I introduced this bill in 2021 as LB 473. LB 153 would create a fund consisting of money appropriated by the legislature from general funds. The initial fund would begin with an appropriation of $10 million. for whatever you think is appropriate, and would assist school districts with upfront aid when they see a substantial increase in their special education expenditures over the previous year. Currently, school districts are reimbursed by the state through federal IDEA funds for a percentage of their special education costs. Usually, this reimbursement amount is somewhere between 40 and 50% of sped expenditures. But you've heard, I think by now, that we're attempting to increase that percentage. But this reimbursement comes a year in arrears, so districts have to pay these costs upfront before they get reimbursed, which can be very difficult for them in situations where costs rise dramatically and unexpectedly from year to year. This is especially common in our smaller school districts, where one additional student moving into the district can cause a substantial increase in costs if the district does not already have the programs or tools required to address the student's needs. They may need to hire, for example, an ASL translator or buy a new school bus that can accommodate the needs of a student with physical disability, or hire additional staff members to assist a student with a learning or behavioral disability. The Extraordinary Increase in Special Education Expenditures Fund would seek to address this issue by providing some state aid for special education earlier in the same school year that the expenditures were made if there was an extraordinary increase. Under this bill, a school district that wanted to apply for funds would have to submit their special education expenditures as of December 31st of the current school year by January 15th. The department would then calculate 107% of half of the actual sped education expenditures for the prior year. If the number that the NDE calculates is greater than the expenditures submitted by the district, then the district is reimbursed, is eligible for reimbursement in an amount no greater than the difference between the two numbers. Since the $10 million that the bill allocates for the fund would likely not be enough to cover all the eligible districts' extraordinary increases, funds would be paid out proportionally, unless you all would like to increase that number, which I am open to. You all know about how this has also happened where there are some resources that have recently closed, which has caused a precipitous increase in special education funding. This is an attempt to fix that problem. When the reimbursements are calculated for the school year in which a district received aid from the fund, the district would not then receive their regular reimbursement for expenditures. Those would instead go to the fund. So the fund gets reimbursed for whatever it pays out and makes it self-sustainable. So this I see as a one-time expenditure of capital, which would then be self-sustaining because the money goes originally to the school district that needs it when they find themselves in this position, and then the money that would be reimbursed to them would go into the fund. It's my hope that this fund can assist school districts in meeting unexpected special education needs and help Nebraska better serve students with special education needs, no matter what part of the state they happen to live in. It's not going to be something that affects school districts that have a very large number of students, because just proportionally, they're not going to find themselves in that position of having such an extraordinary increase that they would go over 7%. This is mainly for the smaller school districts where a few children can make a significant difference in the number of, or the amount of special education expenditures that they have. So I will say that if there are ideas about how to make the bill better, I'm more than happy to work with the committee to do this. I am going to waive closing because I need to get back to my committee. So if you would like to ask me questions, this may be the opportunity. And of course, I'm always available to the committee and to all of you whenever you would like to ask me questions.
Any questions for Senator DeVore? Senator Linehan?
Thank you, Chairman Merman. Is there, where did you get, I mean, the 107% versus like 110% or 105%? Where's the 7%?
You know what, Senator Linehan, I can't remember.
Okay, that's fine.
We made it before, and there was a reason, but I cannot recall what it was.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much for being here.
Senator Conrad?
Thank you, Chair Merman. Good to see you, Senator DeBoer. As a new member of committee, I'm just trying to get up to speed. Can you help me understand, Senator DeBoer, how this measure kind of relates to or complement some of the other measures we have before us to basically try and address the same issue, which is to increase resources for school districts and kids with serving kids with special needs. So I know Senator Wishart has had measures related to that. I think maybe Senator Sanders has some of those measures as part of the governor's kind of broader vision for education reform. Does this fit within that puzzle? Is it, just help me understand kind of how it may fit within that puzzle or be separate and distinct, because I'm just trying to
Yeah,
sort
absolutely.
through it.
So the main difference is that whatever other programs we put into place, if they go through the regular special education funding, as we've always done, as the federal government requires, et cetera, those will be paid a year in arrears.
Right.
This is to get the money up front. So it's just to give them money up front if they suddenly, in the middle of the September, discover that they have 3 new students they didn't expect to have. And so now their expenditures are much higher. They've got to find a way to pay for that within their existing budget, but they don't have the existing budget because they didn't know it was coming, and the money doesn't reimburse them until later, a year later, which doesn't really do them a lot of good.
Right.
So part of the problem is they are always kind of wondering what's going to happen this year. Where are we going to be at when school opens in terms of our special education needs?
I got it. So this is like a revolving fund, kind of a short-term stopgap before the regular funding streams come into place in terms of when they're accrued, when they're paid. Is that an
That's exactly it.
oversimplification? Okay.
That's exactly it. So it's just a pot of money that when you find yourself a little short because you have some unexpected expenditures, you get some money a little earlier. It's still not right away.
Okay.
It's still a semester lag time, but it gives them some money a little earlier so that they can pay those additional costs of a van or a student or a helper or a para or whatever.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions? If not, I have one. I know this can be an issue, especially in small rural schools.
Yep.
Just 1 or 2 or whatever, severely disabled, especially coming to school. This program would help them to help the school to get through that first year.
Correct.
Do they, and you may have said it, but I probably missed it. Do they pay back any of that after the first year then?
So they don't actually pay it back. The money that they would get otherwise reimbursed from the federal government, all of that would then go into the fund to reimburse it. So they don't actually have to repay it because their reimbursement funds would go in there. So their reimbursement funds would be redirected to the extraordinary increase in special education fund.
So part of if we increase it to 80% federal and state support, part of that, those funds would go into the revolving fund, I guess.
Yeah, just to pay it back for whatever was fronted. So this is like the fund is like, that I'm creating would be something that would just sort of be a short-term loan that gets paid back then when you get your paycheck, basically. It's like a paycheck advance, but for okay, don't tell Senator Vargas I said that. But scratch that. but it would operate as a short-term funding supply, which then would get paid back from the long-term funding supplies.
That 80% stated federal funding, as you mentioned, comes a year in arrears.
Correct.
So they wouldn't have those funds until the next year.
Right. That's why when the next year, when those funds come in, that's what pays it back. So it's just like a short-term kind of a loan because they would get the money from the Special Education Extraordinary Increase Fund. I really need an acronym. From that, in the year when they're actually paying these higher costs, the next year they'll budget for that, they'll all that, and they'll know that they're having that money come in from the federal government.
if those same students were still there the next year, they would still need those funds the next year. I guess
Right,
that's
but they would be getting them, I mean, it's something that they could plan for, right? So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't, this by no means solves the problem of a year in arrears. It eases the problem of a year in arrears. And that's, the best that we could think of. If you, Senator Merman, or your committee have an idea of how to improve the bill so that it would solve the problem, I'm all ears. I'm happy to work with you on anything to work on this. I reintroduced this again because I think we just ran out of time to work on it last year. We weren't in a situation where we could. I think this is a work in progress bill. We've made some improvements from the initial time I've introduced it. I think it identifies a problem that does exist out amongst especially our rural schools, and it suggests a solution. If there's a better one, I'm happy to work on that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Senator Walls.
Thank you, Chairman Merman. Thank you, Senator DeBoer, for bringing this bill. And you answered part of my question. Did it get out of committee? Did it get on the floor? What happened to it that you have to reintroduce it?
Oh, goodness, I don't remember.
Okay. It's okay. Well, you and I had a conversation. I'm glad that you're reintroducing this bill. You and I had a conversation. There was a agency that serves individuals with developmental disabilities that had an actual special education school within their organization. And unfortunately, unfortunate, that school within that organization had to close. So the kids that were attending that school had to be transferred to the public schools. And in not a lot of time to plan, not a lot of time to bring in teachers or hire teachers. So it really put a strain on the community and a financial strain on the schools. So I just wanted to say thank you again for bringing the bill. I think it's a good way for communities and school districts to be able to plan for unexpected things that happen.
I think that's exactly right. And if we'd had something like this in place, or a better version, which you all will think of, then we would have had some ability to sort of help those folks when they are suddenly finding themselves in the position of not having that provider that they had.
Right. It's better for students, families, teachers.
It's better for
everybody all around.
Literally everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any proponents for LB 153?
Good morning. My name is Jason Chapman, JASON SCHAPMANN. I'm the superintendent of Twin River Public Schools in Genoa, Nebraska. Again, thank you, Senator and Chairman Merman, for the opportunity and the Education Committee to speak today. Thank you, Senator DeBoer, for introducing LB 153 and making special education a priority in our schools. Lastly, thank you to Governor Pillen for making special education a priority in the budget with LB 583 and reimbursing school districts for special education expenditures. Education has always been focused around what students deserve and what they need. There's a difference between what a student deserves and what a student needs. What a student deserves can be based off feeling, emotion, or state of mind at a current moment in time. Just think back to when that student receives an all-time best in a test. Most people would say the student deserves a reward based upon the joy of seeing the student succeed. On the other hand, when a student misbehaves, a lot of people would say that student deserves punishment. What a student deserves is mostly based on subjectivity. What a student needs is based on data from research-based testing and compiled input from numerous sources such as parents, teachers, specialists, and even the student himself. Student needs can range from all levels of education, on the top of student of the class needing college-level course to a special education student needing Tier 3 intervention. However, one is harder than the other. Providing a dual credit class for a student can be as simple as having a student be monitored by an individual staff member in a random classroom and potentially at no expense thanks to scholarships and colleges providing low to no cost courses. Students in special education do not have it that easy. A student in special education needs specific interventions, accommodations, modifications, and instruction based upon their disability. In the past 3 years of the pandemic, students are in need of more intervention, specifically those with specific learning disabilities in reading, math, especially students being verified as having an emotional disturbance. Providing what these students need is not an option, regardless of their disability. Providing for their needs is becoming increasingly challenging for districts, And unfortunately, funding and resources are becoming a larger barrier to providing for the students. At Twin River, 2 twin brothers moved into the district in the fall of 2018. For the sake of their story, their names are Josh and Justin. To paint the picture, Josh and Justin reached 6'2", 200 pounds, and very strong boys. Josh and Justin had autism, were nonverbal, and very physical. Once students move into the district, there's no choice in what to offer the students. It's what they need. Josh and Justin needed an individual case manager or special education teacher for constant progress monitoring and 2 paraprofessionals for each student. Throughout their time at Twin River, these students had to be transported from Genoa to Omaha to the Monroe Meyer Institute and had specialty rooms renovated with cameras for security systems, dignity rooms, and electronic door barricades for their safety and the safety of the staff, all at the expense of the district. The district did what it could provide for the needs of the students. However, it was not enough to provide for their needs. Most recently, Josh and Justin had to be transported to Grand Island to Integrated Life Choices at the cost of $107 per hour per student, or roughly $12,000 a month. An estimated total of the students in 3 years cost the district over $870,000. Each year, the cost of the student's education would be approximately 2.5 cents on the district's levy. This story is and isn't about money. The district would provide for the students regardless of the expense, not just because it's the law, but because it's a correct moral decision. These students are never going to compete in sports, college, or the workforce, but mainly against themselves, their benchmarks, and their goals. Josh and Justin needed special education to better their lives. Josh and Justin have since moved out of the state, but by the end of their time at Twin River, the students had made progress on their goals because of their placement outside of the district. Twin River Public Schools would have benefited from LB 153 to plan for expenditures in the current school year and future years of educating Josh and Justin. In closing, I would support LB 153 and encourage you to move it forward.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Chapman? Yes, Senator Conrad.
Thank you, Chair Merman. Thank you, Superintendent Chapman. So under the current system, without these measures or reforms, taking the brothers example that you shared with our committee, so help me understand, like your school would have perhaps as part of their budget, like a buffer or a line item that's unallocated for unanticipated expenses, or how do you make it work under the current system?
So currently you'd shift your paras. You pay them increasingly more. So if you have a paraprofessional that's a general education para, then probably make $1,450. You'd shift that to probably like a $1,750 special education para and move them in. Unfortunately, in this case, we rolled through about 3 different paras because of the nature of the boys. We also had to allocate 1 special education teacher and shift the caseload to the other teachers instead of just hiring a new staff person like we did the next year. In this case, there was the buffer. This is my first year in Twin River, so I inherited kind of them just for this school year. But doing the research in the past, there's a small buffer, but as far as if I were to do it, that's where you start pushing back a technology rollout for a year. You start looking at a curriculum change that you might have to delay a year. In a sense, you just have to do it. I mean, in the end of the day, like I said, you have to raise your levy to the amount that you need it to, because like for these students, this year alone would have cost $250,000 to educate the students. And so for us, I remember moving into the chair, I said, what are some of the strategic goals of the budget for the year? One of them is you're going to have 2 students that you need to plan for special education for these funds. And so when I took it to the board, I said, we have some drastic student needs that need to be met here. And that's the purpose of one of the levy at where it was set.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one. From the way you described these boys, they would need someone, an aide that's very strong physically to handle
2 to 1, them. 2 staff members to 1.
Yeah, I noticed that. So if or when they were a danger to themselves or someone else, could their aide restrain them some way?
It was difficult, and that's kind of where I'd put in there about the rooms itself. And so they call them dignity rooms, where they're padded rooms. They have special locks that are required by law. They can't lock from one side. You have to continually push on it. Those rooms are built into our classrooms. And so if they could, 2 people would get the student into one, and then another person, so 3 total, would push that kid into that room, because they would throw things, they would defecate on people, they would hit people. And again, we're not talking to the strongest people in the world. We did have, I know, some workman's compensation claims that came about from these students as well. And so it was fairly dangerous. That's where I said, eventually, again, you go from your level of restriction to where you cannot provide for these needs of the students anymore, to the point where they needed some sort of, it wasn't residential, but that would be the step before residential. That's what those kids needed. And when I talked to their teacher, again, sorry, I'm venturing off here, but you talk to their teacher at Integrated Life Choices, and their goals were to be able to walk out to the car with the hand on a staff member's shoulder. When they had a week, 2 weeks bad time, they were 3-to-1 staff to student. And so again, for us, I said, what do you need? We'll pay you what you need. Don't worry about it. But the goals for these students are a lot different than if they were for, a normal, regular education student. And so, sorry, I ventured off on your question there, but
No problem.
it was, from what I've gathered, it was a very stressful environment for principals, superintendents, caseworkers, and kind of just everybody involved, because of they actually broke the security doors that were holding them back. They were very strong voice. And so
it was for the good of those 2 students and all students in the school and
absolutely.
staff, everyone in the school, to be able to restrain them when necessary.
Correct. And one of the big things too, kind of to go back into this bill, as you kind of start to plan and prepare for not only this year, but it would be for future years as well. So you can build that into the bill or into your funding. And so I think it'd be very beneficial to get that money up front, and then obviously take it out in the next years for your reimbursements. So that way you can plan better in the future.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Senator Conrad.
Thank you, Senator Merman. And sorry, just a quick follow-up there. Senator Merman's line of questioning kind of made me think through some of these issues. So under existing law, your school district had the resources and flexibility, maybe not the resources, but had a legal framework to protect the students, faculty, and staff with the challenging cases you had before you.
It was, trying to think, because again, first year, trying to gather from what I've gotten from other people. I would say there's probably more need than what they actually had.
For resources or for the ability to restrain students?
Resources. I think, again, I'm not trying to go down a slippery slope here with the ability to restrain students. I think that's a whole nother bill and a whole nother conversation other than LB 153. Because again, to me, I think the funding is the necessary, what we needed for the bill. I think, again, if we're going to talk restraint, I think that's another avenue we'd have to go down, a different bill to talk about.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Senator Merman and members of the Education Committee. My name is Jack Moles. That's JACKMOLES. And I am the Executive Director of the Nebraska Rural Community Schools Association, also known as NERCSA. On behalf of NERCSA and the Greater Nebraska Schools Association, I'd like to voice our support for LB 153. We thank Senator Bohr for introducing this bill, which recognizes the difficulties faced by districts when unexpected special education costs arise. Many times these costs arise because a student or students move unexpectedly into the district. In discussing LB 153 with member superintendents, many of them shared their stories and how LB 153 would have helped them or would help them right now. I provided some stories for you, and what I did is I just identified them as District 1, District 2, District 3. And the reason for that is I'm just cautious about what I'm saying being able to be traced back to a specific student. If you would like the information on what those districts are, I would certainly share them with you, though. Just to highlight a few things. First of all, District 1 had a family move in with 2 high-need students. You can read about what took place there, but the accommodations came to about $175,000 this year. And for a reference, I looked at last year's SPED expenditures for the district. They amounted to $209,000. So almost a doubling just with one family. District 2 looked at the different things that would cost them with a deaf educator or a deaf student, $80,000 annually for a program plus paras for another student, and the cost of that district. Well, their expenditures last year about 192,000, so we're getting probably over half. District 3. Student came in, needed to be placed in a life skills program with local ESU at $65,000 apiece. Another student had behavioral issues, program at $30,000. And another student receiving educational services at the Iowa School for the Deaf at about $65,000 a year. Total expenditures for last year for the district were $750,000. I provide 3 other ideas there or stories there. Running out of time, but in closing, we appreciate Senator DeBoer's recognition of the severe impact on a district's budget when unexpected high-cost students move in. Most often, these are smaller districts that often do not have a program to house in-house to provide the needed services. Thus, the costs for the services are often placing more of a strain on the school district's budget. LB 153 is an attempt to help those districts and provide them with better ability to plan. So we do encourage you to move forward with LB 153.
Any questions for Mr. Bowles? Sarah Lynn.
Chairman Merman, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mills, for being here. On your District 2, the paras cost between 20 and 25,000 a year. Are the paras not providing benefits?
It depends on the district.
Okay.
The district I was in, we did provide at least a single insurance plan.
Okay.
So it just depends on the district.
All right. Thank you very much.
Any other questions, Mr. Moles? I have one. Not sure who else is going to testify, and maybe there'll be someone more easily answer this question, but there's a $10 million fiscal note, I think it's 10 million, on this bill. It seems like to me, and I haven't read through the whole fiscal note, but it wouldn't cost 10 million a year if schools, temporarily use that money and then repay it back the next year. The cost of the state isn't $10 million.
Yeah, what I was looking at was the pot of money to start it with. And to be honest with you, 10 million might be a little short. I think you might need to go a little further north than that, but the way it was described by Senator DeBoer, yeah, I think you can kind of self-generate and make it self-go.
I guess I didn't look at it that close. So that's just the first year it was going to cost 10 million. It's not 10 million.
That's what she had intended to have in I guess I'd call the pot of money, and then have that available. And like she said, it could be prorated. But, to help those districts the way she's got it set up, 10 million might be a little short.
Okay.
I don't have a magic number for you either.
Sure.
So.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning, Chair Merman, members of the Education Committee. My name is Denixi Gareka, DUNIXIGUERECA. I'm the Executive Director of Stanford Schools, a nonprofit dedicated to advancing public education in Nebraska. Stanford Schools is here in support of LB 153. Educating students with special needs is one of the most important roles of a school district, but it's also one of the costliest. Especially in smaller districts, budgets can be significantly affected if one or even two students with severe needs move into the district in that given year. And often these districts cannot reasonably plan for these expenditures. Schools must and do provide free and appropriate education to special needs students, regardless of what the state and federal reimbursements are paid, affecting the ability to fund other programs and ultimately increasing the pressure to raise property taxes. LB 153 will ease the burden on district providing aid from the Department of Education to fund special education expenditures if special education expenditure exceed 7% from the previous year. As the legislature considers dramatic and overdue increases in special education funding, LB 153 provides a smoothing mechanism to ensure that districts are not left stranded by unexpected education expenditures, We appreciate the legislator's diligent consideration of LB 153 and urge you to advance the bill.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Greco? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Colby Coash, COLBY-COASH. I represent the Nebraska Association of School Boards. Today, my testimony also reflects the support from the Council of School Administrators, the State Education Association, and Greater Nebraska Schools Association. I think the previous testifiers have outlined pretty well, in addition to Senator DeBoer, why we've supported this bill this year. We supported it when she introduced it the previous two sessions, and would like to support it again. As you've all heard, funding for special education in public schools, the cost is rising across the state. What often makes this even more difficult are when the circumstances of an extraordinary high needs student are dropped into a district and their budget pretty unexpectedly. And that when these transfers happen, I mean, when you know what's going to happen, boards can prepare for that. They can budget for those needs, but often that's not the case. And the student is moved in, or sometimes more than one. A couple of the previous testifiers talked about, some behavioral needs that necessitated additional resources, certainly resources related to their disability, but there's also sometimes medical needs that the schools have to accommodate for those students. I'll give you just a couple more examples. There was two siblings who came into a school district and they had a degenerative eye disease. And that disease was going to render them eventually blind. And the school district had to invest in some equipment. And then they had to buy all new textbooks which were in Braille, which was something that they didn't expect, but they needed to teach those students how to read using Braille. And so that required a pretty significant investment just in the textbooks. So I just wanted to ramp. Sometimes it's a medical issue, right? Students come in that use feeding tubes, mobility devices, wheelchairs, and things like that. Sometimes it's building issues. You might have to do things to make sure that your school is more accessible for students, and that's certainly a consideration as well. So we just wanted to come back in once again. Thanks, Senator DeBoer, for reintroducing this bill for all the reasons that you've heard, and urge the committee to advance it.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Coash? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other proponents for LB 153? Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. Hello, my name is Edison McDonald, EDISON, MCDONALD. I'm here representing the ARC of Nebraska. We're Nebraska's largest membership organization representing people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. We support LB 153. You're going to get tired of me talking about the special education crisis, but our families are really struggling this year, unlike any time that I have seen in my 5 years with this organization. I'm very excited that Governor Pillen and a number of you are leading on bills to make sure that we address this, because I think, we've talked a lot, especially with Senator Merman, about school discipline issues. So much of it comes down to just, we don't have adequate staffing. We heard that testifier earlier who talked about how if you don't have the staff to be able to deal with an individual, what do? You shove them into a room. That's when you have more physical interventions and you end up having to grab a student. I don't know about y'all, it's way easier to watch one kid than it is to watch 20. And making sure that we have that proper support is so key. We talked, there was a question earlier that I just kind of wanted to dig into, talking about the bigger picture, because there are a lot of special education bills out there this year. And I think there are a whole bunch of these pieces that work really well together. LB 583, Senator Sanders' increase in state funding to 80% really focuses on kind of the long-term structural sort of piece. And I think that it's going to decrease, if that passes, the need for this, but I still think that this would be an important tool to have, especially for those small districts. Then I think kind of the short-term solution is LB 385, Senator Linehan's incentive bonuses of $5,000, including for special education teachers. And then I think we also have to look at kind of those outside pieces. And I think that Senator Dorn's LB 48 focuses on ESU funding. In those smaller school districts, those ESUs are just core to really making sure that they have proper SPED supports. And then I think the last one that we have that I'm really looking at this year is LB 705, which is Senator Merman's Behavioral Health Training Fund. You know, I think it's not just about having enough staff, but it's about having enough properly trained staff. And with that, I would urge your support of the bill and open for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. McDonald? If not, thank you very much. Any other proponents for LB 153? Any opponent? Are you a proponent or no?
Proponent.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Chair Merman, distinguished senators and members of the Education Committee, my name is Richard Hasty, RICHARDHASTY. I'm here today as the superintendent with the Plattsmouth Community Schools, extending support for Senator DeBoer's LB 153. The intent of LB 153 is to provide additional resources for public school districts that are experiencing extraordinary increases in special ed costs. On November 29, 1975, President Gerald Ford signed into law the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, known as Public Law 94-142. While the name has changed to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, and subsequent amendments have provided additional clarity, the original intent of providing a free and appropriate education, or FAPE, to students with disabilities in every state and locality across the country remains at the forefront. Concurrently, the act remains a mandate that is not fully funded by the federal government or Nebraska, although there are strides to enhance that at this time. As an educator with over 20 years of experience in special education, I can assure you that we have educators in our state and throughout the nation that strive to provide a free and appropriate public education for all students, regardless of their disabilities. The stark reality is that with the lack of 100% funding for this mandate, public school districts must utilize general fund revenues to fund much of the excess costs related to special education. For example, the 2022-23 Nebraska Department of Education approved service provider rates are $79 an hour for speech therapy, physical therapy, and occupational therapy services. In 2021-22, the rate for speech therapy services increased by $21 from $58 an hour to $79 an hour, and that's in the chart above as well. This is a 36.2% increase. The rate for OT and PT increased from $12 from $67 to $79, so a $12 increase, and that was a 17.9% increase. While annual cost increases of 2 to 4% are common in budgets, I believe the cost increases of 36.3% and 17.9% are extraordinary and create unanticipated additional costs to school districts, particularly for unanticipated high-needs students. While these significant types of rate increases are atypical, they create even greater budget challenges for school districts that have the opportunity to serve unanticipated high-needs students that need these specific services. A list of special education services and NDE-approved provider rates are provided at the end of this document. This information is provided merely to share the broad scope of services for which a district might need to support unanticipated high-needs students. Excuse me. Please keep in mind that these rates are for individual services and do not include the rates charged by agencies, some of which you've heard about in various stories, for a student that might attend their program full-time, which can typically range between $200 to $300 per day, with exceptions, which you've heard, outside of this range. In recent years, the special ed reimbursement rate has been around 50% or less, with the remaining costs borne by public school district.
Mr. Hasty?
Yeah.
you've only got maybe 20 seconds or so left.
Okay, I'm going to jump to the last paragraph then. I want to thank everybody for letting me share this information as it relates to the overall excess costs. I realize the significant determining factors are high-need students moving in. I've tried to provide some greater or broader scope of information as far as the costs that could increase for a district significantly from one year to the next. And then to close, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share this information. I welcome additional special education funding through LB 153 that will supplement and not supplant, although I understand now from Senator DeBoer that's not the case, as this is a revolving fund, resources for school districts across Nebraska that are experiencing extraordinary costs relative to the provision of special ed services for our students. So one thing I would suggest for consideration, because I've read the bill a few times and I've read various summaries from numerous organizations, I don't know that it was abundantly clear that this is a revolving fund where all of the money would necessarily come out of the following school year's reimbursement. And I would encourage you to consider having some of this money be such that if the district, let's hypothetically say it's a 50% reimbursement and they get some of that up front, that all of that is not then taken from them the following year. That maybe a portion of that goes back into this fund and the district still receives some of that reimbursement. So it's not a full revolving fund, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hastings? Senator Linehan.
Thank you, Chairman Merman, and thank you very much for being here. I've never seen this list before, which I've been on the education committee for 6 years. So these are the current rates per hour?
Those are, yes, the NDE approved service provider rates primarily for individual service providers, not the agencies like some of which you've heard when a student has to be contracted to an out of district level 3 placement. Those costs range from $200 to $300, but these are per hour. In many districts, we're a Class B school district in Plattsmouth. We have trouble finding, because of the market, the people that provide these services. And when we have to contract them with them directly versus hiring them as our employee, then we're looking at these rates. They could choose to charge us less than that, but not all of them do. Obviously, if they've got a rate of $79 an hour or whatever it might be for their particular service, they're probably going to charge us that rate.
So these are contractors, not employees.
Not school employees. If we're fortunate enough, like I said, with the market to hire our own employees, we might be able to be more efficient with our resources. But when those people aren't available, as you've heard, for behavioral mental health, could be for nursing where a student needs medical support in one of the examples, then it's very difficult to find those people and we have to pay these provider rates. Or in some cases, if they charge more, we just don't get reimbursed for it. This is what we can get reimbursed for through the state with their approved provider rates.
But just reimbursed at 40%, right?
Whatever the state rate is, you've heard a variety of, I think Senator DeBoer mentioned 40 to 50%, depending on the year. So correct.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Mr. Hastings?
Yeah.
Senator.
Thank you, Chairman Merman. So I just want to clarify what Senator Linehan was trying to say. So if you are contracting out let me find one, licensed mental health practitioner for $64 an hour, you're being currently reimbursed about 35.
Whatever the state rate for that
Yeah.
particular year is, there's a formula where that's calculated and it varies year to year, but correct, yes.
Okay, all right, just want to clarify. Thanks.
Any other questions, Mr. Hastings? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Any other proponents for LB 153? Any opponents for LB 153? Anyone want to testify in the neutral position? If not, Senator Senator DeBoer has waived closing. We have online comments, 4 proponents, no opponents, no neutral. So with that, we'll close the hearing for LB 153 and open the hearing for LB 805. Senator Von Gillard. Welcome, Senator Von Gillard.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Merman and the committee members.
For the record, my name is Senator Brad Von Gillern, BradVonGillern, and I represent District 4, which is parts of West Omaha and Elkhorn. Today, I'm introducing LB 805, which clarifies school access for certain youth organizations. Current law states that any organization listed in Title 36, Subtitle 2, Part B of federal statute may request to provide oral or written information to students in a public school. Schools shall make a good faith effort to accommodate the request. The school district may request a background check of the representative, may deny that representative's request if there's any felony on that person's record, and the cost of that check is on the organization's dime. I want to emphasize that this bill is limited to those organizations listed in federal law and are congressionally chartered, non-political organizations that have encouraged character development and community service. This includes organizations like the Girl Scouts USA, Boys and Girls Clubs of America, Big Brothers and Sisters of America, Boy Scouts of America, and the FFA. I have a list which I will provide to the page to distribute of those organizations, please. Under federal statute as a handout. You will see that these are well-established, well-respected mainstream organizations that have a proven record of building character of our youth and providing a positive impact in our schools and communities. These organizations are cornerstones and iconic with our shared American experiences. LB 805 is modeled after similar legislations passed in 8 other states. We chose to bring this legislation because school districts face legal challenge when outside groups wish to enter. The First Amendment and related case law prohibits viewpoint discrimination. This means that a public entity risks a lawsuit if they allow one group special permission and deny another group. In response, many school districts have chosen not to allow any outside groups in at all. This bill gives districts the flexibility and clarity to allow congressionally chartered groups in without potential legal risks. On hand today, we have representatives from some of those honored organizations that will explain the importance of this bill to them and to our students. I will also note that you should have a letter of support from the Gretna Public School District, among others. And I would like to thank the many parents who have contacted you about this bill. I think it speaks to how valuable these groups are to our schools and our children. Passing this bill will accomplish several very good things. First of all, it will grow character and integrity in our youth. Second, we know that character is contagious and the impact of these kids will be felt by the administrators, the teachers, and other students, and will result in increased test scores, higher graduation rates, and better citizens graduating from our public institutions. Lastly, these great impacts come at zero cost to the school systems and taxpayers, as these organizations are self-funded through charitable giving. These groups are terrific partners with our schools. We need to do all that we can to utilize their programs to positively impact our youth and our communities. LB 805 is a great way to strengthen needed relationships with school communities, with supportive volunteer organizations like Teammates, which is widely allowed in schools. Let's continue to encourage and foster these wholesome dynamic relationships with these organizations and encourage those future leaders who might sit where we do one day. I'm certainly open to suggestions on how we can accommodate the concerns of the few opponents of this bill, and we'll listen to those. We've been discussing some amendment options with those who are neutral, and we'll consider those also. I do have an amendment to pass out also. The pages would grab those, please, which clarifies that the meeting times for these organizations would happen during non-curricular time. So the school districts don't give up any of their teaching time to any outside organization. So with that said, I will be happy to address any questions.
Thank you, Senator Von Gillern. Any questions this time? Yes, Senator Conrad.
Thank you, Chair Merman. Good to see you, Senator Von Gillern. Welcome to the Education Committee.
first time.
I'm trying to, and it sounds like one of the things that I was worried about, and it sounds like maybe the amendment that you're passing around helps to address it, was just kind of the volume. Like once you provide for access, just how do administrators or teachers or students for that matter, just kind of fit that into the limited amount of time that they have for their studies and things like that. So it seems like maybe the amendment addresses some of those things. And just as I'm reviewing it quickly, would you think is non-curricular time, would that be like then before school, after school, lunchtime, recess?
Bingo, all of the above. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those are perfect examples. And again, I think the word that's real important here, this is not to provide privileged access. It's really, what we're really trying to do is add clarity, because so many of the school leadership are so confused about what they can and can't do.
And so they just say, we're not going to allow anything. Well, that's not the best scenario, in my opinion, because there are some great organizations that can do great things with our kids. And again, the beauty of this, is for those of you who have had the privilege or the burden of knowing me, is I'm a fiscal conservative, and to have this benefit be provided to our kids at no cost to the districts is outstanding. And some of the best advocates for these organizations are the teachers that have seen the impact of that these groups have had on their kids, and then the net impact of that on other kids in their classrooms. And when we know that student behavior is such a challenging thing for students or for teachers right now, I just really feel passionate about getting this done.
Okay, that's helpful. I know, we have 2 little kids at Lincoln Public Schools, and I'm always kind of in awe and a little overwhelmed at like the amount of information that comes home in their Friday folders or the emails or the robust offering of after school clubs and programs. And I know not every district has the same experience as we do in Lincoln for different reasons, but I know the Cub Scouts and other folks participate in our schools, and our kids can join up with Girl Scouts or things like that if they want to. So I'm just trying to kind of figure out like the right balance between the local control piece and kind of the state mandate piece. And then, also what's the appropriate role for, if these aren't available at school, for parents to expose their children to other groups that maybe they want them to engage with. So I'm just trying to work through some of those issues.
Yeah, all great questions. One of the things that, again, just to add additional clarity, what this provides for is a conduit for information. This bill does not ask for use of the school building. Those are separate conversations. Okay. All those kinds of things are really separate conversations. So it's a means, like you said, of disseminating, so you have more things coming home in your Friday folder to digest, but it's a means to get that information to the parents so that they can make good decisions about their kids. And one thing that I failed to mention is this disproportionately, probably not the word, it benefits families of lower means to a great degree, because again, most of the organizations, just about all the organizations that I mentioned, are funded by private charitable contributions. And so many of those programs are at free or reduced cost, particularly to marginalized families.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah. And I just thinking, I really appreciate it, and we'll dig in. And I have to run to retirement in a minute, so I might not be here for the whole hearing, but
thanks for your question.
Appreciate continue working on it. And I do just want to think through, like, if you say that the goal is really the oral information or the dissemination of information, that's, I think, a different strain, because I'm also, hear continually from teachers and the kids that they already have really limited time for recess, right? We're ratcheting back that movement and activity so that we can fit more learning into the day. And, we don't want to take any recess away from we'd all get in trouble with that.
I would not have been happy about that either.
That'd probably be a bipartisan.
If you happen to miss it, let's touch base later and add clarity to that, because I think what we're talking about is once or twice a year, a small time segment. So we're not talking about weekly or monthly type events. So thank you.
Any other questions, Senator Von Gillen? Okay, thank you. Any proponents for LB 805? Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Megan Wright, MEGANWRIGHT. In May 2011, my kindergarten son brought home a flyer from school about a Cub Scout open house. My family didn't know anything about Scouts, but we went and he joined. I became a Cub Scout parent and a leader for his den, working with the same 8 to 12 boys from first grade through 5th grade. I continued to volunteer when he graduated to a troop in 2016, attending campouts and serving on the troop committee. In 2019, I became a Scoutmaster of one of the first Scouts BSA troops for girls, ages 11 to 17. Both as a parent and as a leader, I have witnessed the benefits of Scouting. First, Scouts provides an opportunity for families to do activities together that they may not have otherwise done. Anything from science projects, community service, and building Pinewood Derby cars to hiking and camping. so many of us are glued to our screens, and Scouts offers a reason to set down the phones and the tablets and to focus on something else together. And that was certainly true for my own family. Second, Scouts promotes community, civic responsibility, and life skills, both within the pack and the troop and in a broader sense. Scouts learn about their duty to others, including values such as being trustworthy, kind, friendly, courteous, and of course, all about service projects. Learning about how government works, including meeting and talking with a government official and attending a public meeting or court proceeding, is built into the structure of the program. Among other skills, Scouts learn first aid, budgeting, and project planning, which are lessons that they carry into adulthood. Scouts teaches young people to be leaders, giving them a safe place to try and fail and to try again. Adult mentors lead by example and coach Scouts as they take on leadership roles for a project, for their den, or for their troop. Helping a Scout think about what worked and what didn't work and what could be done differently next time pushes forwards a Scout's critical thinking skills and builds confidence in their ability to be successful despite imperfect results. I talked with a lot of Scouts and Scout parents over the years, and their words are more powerful than anything that I could tell you. A Scout parent whose teenage Scout has autism told me her Scout would never have gotten a job had she not gained the confidence to do so in Scouts. A young Scout who struggled socially at school told me, I like Scouts because people are nice to me here. A Scout who perhaps didn't have strong role models in other areas of her life said, Scouts made me realize I could be a better person. And finally, a Scout was asked at her Eagle Board of Review to describe Scouting in a single word. Her answer was life-changing. But for a flyer that came home from school, I would not have heard those words, and I would not be sitting here today. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Wright? If not, thank you very much. Any other proponents for LB 805?
Good, almost afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicole Vesely, NICHOLEVESELY, and I am the outreach manager for Girl Scouts Spirit of Nebraska. I have 10 staff statewide that lead outreach troops and after-school programs, just so you know where I'm coming from when I speak about Girl Scouts. I'm here to testify in support of LB 805 on behalf of Girl Scout Spirit of Nebraska. As an outreach manager and outreach specialist and a troop leader myself, I've seen firsthand the positive impact Girl Scouts makes for girls. The mission of Girl Scouts is to build girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. Through the Girl Scout leadership experience, girls develop the competencies to accomplish big things. The Girl Scout leadership experience is comprised of 4 pillars: STEM, outdoors, life skills, and entrepreneurship. Through this unique hands-on experience-based curriculum, girls learn leadership and life skills that prepare them to use their voice to improve their communities, including their school communities. Just like I'm using my voice now, you can tell it might be a little shaky because I'm not used to testifying, but I love that I can lead by example today. Girl Scouts builds the essential skills needed in today's classrooms and workplaces, including sense of self, positive values, challenge seeking, healthy relationships, and community problem solving. Girl Scouts is one of the federally chartered nonprofit organizations contemplated by LB 805. For the past over 110 years, Girl Scouts has provided girls the opportunity to explore new possibilities, ignite their curiosity, and build a belief that they can do anything. With nearly 1.5 million current members and 60 million alumni, Girl Scouts unites girls and women across distance and decades through lifelong friendships, shared adventures, and the desire to make the world a better place. Girl Scouts established itself in Nebraska in 1926 with the formation of troops in Omaha. From there, Girl Scout councils sprung up westward across the state, providing hundreds of thousands of Nebraska girls equal access to Girl Scouting. Today, the Spirit of Nebraska Council spans 92 Nebraska counties and provides the Girl Scout leadership experience to over 10,000 girls annually. I'm in full support of LB 805, which will require schools to work with Girl Scouts and other federally chartered organizations to provide access to promote their programs to students and families. Schools are a critical partner for Girl Scouts. Schools that embrace Girl Scouts by providing space for troop meetings and allowing promotion of Girl Scouts at schools have a strong partner, and together we enhance the school community. Having access to communicate the benefits of Girl Scouting to families through schools will grow women leaders in our communities for the future. All 3 female secretaries of state in the United States are former Girl Scouts, and 60% of the women in Congress were once Girl Scouts too. In addition to benefiting Girl Scouts and girls, a partnership benefits schools as well, as we regularly provide Girl Scout staff to support school events such as parent-teacher conferences, book fairs, science fairs, and more. Some schools have never allowed Girl Scouts in, and LB 805 would allow the opportunity for that to happen throughout the state. Thank you so much for your time, and let me know if you have any questions about Girl Scouts.
Any questions for Mrs. Besley? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Any other proponents? Good now afternoon.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ellie Mahaffey, Elliemehaffey. I'm from Elkhorn, Nebraska. I'm 13 years old, and I'm a Life Scout with Troop 1885. My scouting adventure started in 2018, ever since girls were allowed to join. I was in 3rd grade, and thanks to my dad, I knew what Scouts was and all the remarkable things it does. But not everyone has someone in their life who knows what scouting is. I've learned so much from Scouts BSA, been given incredible opportunities, not just to see and learn from leaders, but I've become one myself. I've gained life skills that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. I've been able to grow and learn thanks to amazing adults that put a pause on their life to pour the powerful and strong message that scouting brings. Scouts are able to gain life skills like first aid, knots, and how to survive in the wild alone, which have all given me confidence and more self-reliance. Because of Scouts, I have been given the knowledge on how to respond to difficult situations. I've watched 11, 12-year-old kids face their fears and climb a 50-foot rock wall. Most importantly, I've watched Scouts come together to help one another and to encourage one another. Scouts are put in circumstances where we get to serve our communities and learn how to put others before ourselves. I could not imagine what I could do without Scouts. The message scouting holds needs to be spread. Kids and adults need to be able to know what Scouting BSA is, and schools are amazing environments to spread its message. More and more people need to be led down the scouting trail. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Any questions? If not, thank you. Great job. Any other proponents? Good afternoon.
My name is Donald Nimne, DonaldNimnehjr. I'm a Boy Scout. I am with Troop 76 in Midtown Omaha, and I am a Life Scout. Scouting has helped me a lot with my journey. I joined ever since I was in 1st grade, and I met new people. I came to a new school a year before that, and then with Scouting, I was able to meet new people, and I created friendships I still have to this day. Scouting has taught me a lot of things. It's taught me how to be a leader. It's taught me how to be a leader. It's taught me how to make friendships. It's taught me how to face my fears and other things like that. Scouting has also taught me how to face situations in the real world, such as personal finance, management, fitness, camping, and hiking. Scouting has helped me with a lot. It's also helped me with my education by teaching me a lot of different things. So I just want to come up here and say today that Scouting has helped me with a lot of things, and I believe that other people should join because it will help you throughout your life, and then it will give you friendships that you would have to this day. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald. I'm impressed you did that all from memory. Any other questions? Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good job. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Education Committee. My name is David Pond. I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Overland Trails Council of the Boy Scouts.
Could you spell your name, please?
P-L-O-N-D.
Thank you.
We cover 44 counties in central and western Nebraska. I grew up as a term called a latchkey child. You all know what that term was. My mom and dad went to work prior to me getting up to go to school. And they returned home after I got out of school. A flyer came to me and someone talked to me about joining Scouts. And I joined Scouts. I became an Eagle Scout. And I've worked for this wonderful organization now for almost 40 years. I've seen the difference that it makes in young people's lives. I've seen what it does for schools, for communities, the amount of service projects done by young people. It's a tremendous benefit. The fact that schools and Scouts work together to build great citizens is what we're about. And I strongly encourage that you pass LB 805 to help the future of our kids in central and western Nebraska and of all Nebraska. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pond. Hold up. Any questions?
Oh, sure.
If not, thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Senator Merman. Committee, my name is Chris Mahaffey. I'm the proud father of Ellie Mahaffey, who you have just heard from. And I also have the privilege of being the Scout Executive and CEO of the Mid-America Council. The bill that...
excuse me, would you mind spelling?
Sure. CHRISMEHAFFEY. I can remind her to do it, but then I didn't do it. Senator Sanders introduced this legislation last year, and we ran out of time, so it's kind of Senator Von Gillen to reintroduce it this year. The bill does a couple of things. It allows Title 36 organizations to come in once a year at the superintendent's discretion. The amendment that was passed around during non-curriculum time means that time before school starts, during lunch, which is we're giving kids a chance to eat, but they can also take in information at the same time, during PE or in the after-school hours. We do not want to interrupt the school day. And it's only once a year. These organizations were also protected under the No Child Left Behind Act in 2001 that was passed introduced under George Bush and under the Department of Education. This falls under the Civil Rights Protection Code there. We don't want to be adversaries of our local schools. We want to be able to work with our local schools and have protections for our superintendents and our school boards in order to be able to provide an opportunity for Title 36 organizations to hear about the good work that is being done in our communities. Just yesterday, Governor Pillen introduced and talked about mentoring in a room on this floor and declared that February be Nebraska's mentoring month. All of these Title 36 organizations, the youth serving ones, provide mentoring in a way, whether it's group mentoring like the Girl Scouts or the Boy Scouts, or like teammates in a one-on-one environment. So what we really seek from you is the support of Bill 805 in order so that we can continue to have conversations in schools once a year in order to be able to have more children involved and have a greater impact on our communities at large.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. McKee? Senator Albright.
My question is between us and lunch, so. There's 94 different chapters. Have you ever had trouble getting into a public school
Yes.
in the state of Nebraska?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so I mean, I look at all these and think, my goodness, there's something for everyone. So, I would wonder how we would implement this and have like one big day of vendors, kind of like they do for Career Day. You know, this gives everybody an opportunity to take a look at something.
That's a really good idea. The way this has worked in the 8 other states is it's up to the local organizations and the superintendents of the schools in order to decide the day. I've learned from former superintendent in Millard schools that the first 2 weeks are the most ideal to come because they're doing review as they're getting ready to get into the new curriculum for the year. And if we can go during non-curriculum time, that would be best. But Mr. Suckman, Dr. Suckman was concerned about letting scouts or the Girl Scouts in about what other organizations would come. Correct. And in Reality Center, there's probably 4 or 5 that will come and have a conversation, but scheduling those all on the same day so that it's not disruptive to the school during non-curriculum time would be best. And the impact that we have, as Senator Von Gillen already mentioned, about good behavior in classrooms and more parental involvement and those type of things are things that all of our teachers need.
Yes. Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'll be quick because my stomach will probably interrupt us anyways from growling. My name is Chris Toynton, ChrisTointon, and I'm from Papillion, Nebraska, and I'm here to voice my support for LB 805. I've been leading organizations, youth development organizations, for over 30 years. Some of you may recognize me as the former CEO of the YMCA of Greater Omaha. I now consult with youth organizations throughout the country, including the Scouts. And you've heard a lot from Scouts today, and I think it's important, but I think it's also important to hear from somebody who represents a lot of different youth-serving organizations. I'm a huge proponent of the value of public and nonprofit collaboration can bring. We proved it in so many ways, especially during COVID. Many organizations like mine jumped in to make sure teachers had childcare for their kids so they can continue to teach everybody else's kids. We did an amazing program, collaborated with Omaha Public Schools, where we provided fresh fruit and vegetables to every single family in a time of need. And then in OPS as well, we recently opened 2 new high schools that have complete YMCAs built right in. We were able to do those things because of the dedication of the districts to make sure kids had resources no matter what. However, not every district across the state has that ability, and not every district has the safety net of a bill to protect them from these bad actors. Youth today are facing challenges like we've never seen before. The achievement gap is getting worse and worse and wider, especially during and after COVID. LB 805 is a great step towards removing a critical barrier for kids to access proven, dedicated screening programs that increase civic engagement and build important life skills like you heard from the students. Many of us come from homes that have tons of information. I wish Senator Conrad was here. She mentioned she gets lots of flyers. People like us who have access to these, we search those out, we look through those, and we find great organizations. What we want to do is remove a barrier for kids who don't have that in their family. The kids need to hear from these programs. They need to know they're available, and they need to be able to take that home to their parents. That's really critical portion of this, is to break that barrier down. And this bill doesn't take away from the already great collaborations that are happening, the ones I mentioned, the ones that are being forged every day in the state. But it does make sure organizations like Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Red Cross, Future Farmers, Boys and Girls Club are at the table to help kids learn, grow, and succeed. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Toynton? If not, thank you very much. Any other proponents for LB 805? Any opponents for LB 805?
Good afternoon, Chair Merman, members of the committee. My name is Colby Coash, Colby Coash. I represent the Nebraska Association of School Boards. I'm also testifying today on behalf of the Council of School Administrators. Our opposition today, and I want to be clear about this, is not about the Boy Scouts of America. They are a honorable, fine organization, and we are not here opposing the work that they do. Our opposition stems from the fact that we feel this is unnecessary. If you heard one of the first testifiers in support, she said she got a flyer as a parent back from her student. If you survey districts across the state, there is interaction between the Boy Scouts of America and the Girl Scouts and their districts. Some school districts have made the decision to say we don't allow this, so I'm not going to sit here and say that there is access for the Boy Scouts in every district, but there is access, and there's access happening as we speak in the largest school districts in the state and some of the smaller school districts in the state. And so what that tells us is that there is a path, because the Boy Scouts have found a path into large schools, they found a path into small schools, and that's been done at the local level, which is where we would like to keep it. We feel it's important to preserve the role of the school board and the administration to set its own parameters regarding who has access to students, what organizations, what individuals. And as the bill states, it's not just materials, it's also oral, right? So that requires a presentation. And so we are, again, this is not about the Boy Scouts. We just want to preserve the role of the local board to determine who should have access to students. Boards govern this through their policy. There's a variety of different policies that schools have that address this issue, which boards adopt, which they take public comment on when they adopt them. And so we feel that's the most appropriate mechanism for the outcomes of this bill to be realized. And I'll end my testimony there. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Coash? Senator Linehan.
Thank you, Chairman Merman. Mr. Coash, could you provide the committee with a list of schools that do let the Boy Scouts come in for an hour once a year, or let them hand out flyers, and those who do not?
I could try. I think the Boy Scouts would be easier. They could also tell you the districts that they're in.
But it'd be more, I mean, it seems odd that some do and some don't. I'm just trying to figure out, 50% of them do or 50% of them don't, or what's the numbers and who's doing what?
I think anecdotally, I can share with you that it's happening in the metro area and it's happening in rural Nebraska. And then within that, the schools that do have a relationship, it ranges from, hey, can you make available in the hallway flyers about meetings? Can we post a troop meeting announcement to all the way to a formal
Okay, how about
assembly?
if I ask this question? Can you provide a list of the schools that will not let the Boy Scouts come in for 1 hour?
I can try.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Coash? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other opponents for LB 805? Good afternoon.
Hi, my name is Karina McCormick, CarinamcCormick. And I actually went back and forth a little bit about whether I was going to testify as neutral or opponent. Mostly I wanted to bring forward some information about this list. My real problem with the bill is this list. This is not a living document. They've stopped accepting, for the most part, new groups into the 90s. And never was this list intended as an imprimatur. So that was kind of the thing, is that people think this is the government saying this is a good group for our country and our students and our youth. It's just a list that met some bureaucratic requirements. And importantly, it met those requirements whenever that group happened to have been approved onto the list. Could have been the 60s. A lot of these groups don't even exist. And nobody does a continual review of these groups to determine if the current message of the group is still something we want in schools. What are you laughing? Oh, okay. People say my testimonies are funny and they like that, but that wasn't one of those moments. So one of my friends brought up, like, what if there's a Lego nonprofit? Why can't they come? This group actually doesn't really very well reflect what students today needs. This is a list from like the 70s. And by requiring that schools allow any group that happens to be on this outdated list into schools, it actually works very far against some of those other bills that you were having about parents being the ones who should get to determine the information that is given to their students, like these bills for parents having a right to curricular review. This is very contradictory to that. And I just, I want to note, I don't know how much all of you like Frederick Douglass. I don't know what the Frederick Douglass group is currently up to these days. I don't know how extreme it's gotten. But like things like that are on the group. And by this particular law that requires schools to allow any of these groups into their school, I really don't think that is what you all probably intend to be done. To be perfectly honest, this group's testimony really convinced me that we should change this bill and say schools should allow Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts in. They really convinced me Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts are great. So let's do that. But what about these other 90 groups? We're not going to go through one by one, and it removes the school's power of being able to go through one by one. Even if every parent in the school is against the group, this law would require that school make that group be able to come in and talk to the students. And I don't think that is consistent with most of your beliefs, actually. So I wanted to point that out as a flaw in the law, in the bill. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. McCormick? If not, thank you very much. Any other opponents for LB 805? Anyone want to testify in a neutral position for 805? If not, Senator Von Gillen, you're welcome to close. In the online comments, we have 4 proponents, 4 opponents, and 0 neutral.
As was pointed out, I'm the only thing standing between all of us and lunch, so I'll be brief here. I think one of the words I used in my opening, maybe in the first sentence, was that we're hoping to add clarity. For lack of clarity, particularly in a public environment, the answer to the question is typically no. And so what we're trying to do is provide clarity to these superintendents, to these districts about what they can do. Frankly, I don't think the Frederick Douglass Society has been pounding on anybody's door to hand out information to kids, but maybe I'm wrong about that. So I think there's certainly just a handful of organizations that have been proactively pursuing this option to reach out to kids about some phenomenal and terrific opportunities to truly change their lives. One of the things that was mentioned was that as far as in opposition was that this is unnecessary and some parents got a flyer. Well, those parents are kind of the lucky ones. I've had parents that have emailed me about this bill and about some other school-related bills that have talked about how fantastic their school districts are. Well, that's great for them, but it's not that way for everybody. So again, what this bill would do is, or this law would add clarity to what districts can and cannot do, and it would give the opportunity to reach more kids with great opportunities to grow them to be terrific and productive citizens. Governor Pillen's press conference was mentioned yesterday. Tom Osborne spoke in that, and in typical Coach Osborne fashion, he shared some statistics that were pretty staggering in a very humble way, but he said mentoring has proven to provide a 9-to-1 return on social costs. For every dollar spent on building character and integrity in kids, it provides a $9 return. That's $9 saved in social expenses, whether it's welfare, whether it's Medicaid, whether it's incarceration, those kinds of things. So to be able to spend that $1, particularly when it's not a tax dollar or a school district dollar, again, these organizations are providing these services to the districts and to the kids and to the families at no cost to them, which just to me makes it a no-brainer. But With that, I'll close. Like I said, I don't want to ramble on and on. You can tell that I'm passionate about this topic and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Von Gilleren and Senator Sanders?
Thank you, Chairman Merman. Senator Von Gilleren, thank you so much for bringing this bill forward. It's a good bill. I think I'm a product of that. I was a Girl Scout and a cadet, and it's taught me lifelong lessons. It's from what I understand, the Scouts, when they go into the school, is very much self-responsible, right? They don't, I don't think, ask the schools to print flyers for them, ask them for water, ask them for, so what would be the negative of why they wouldn't be allowed?
I'm having a hard time finding a negative.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really am. And one just additional, and I keep landing on the word clarity. There are districts that have not given direction to the schools. And what has happened in those situations is, again, it's been left up to individual principals. There are districts where some principals in that district have said yes, some have said no. So then you have to go pursue the principals on a one-on-one, trying to convince them. But I don't see it. If we were asking for curriculum time, yeah, I could see resistance. But this is nothing but good for the districts, for the teachers. I mean, my heart just goes out every time when I was campaigning and I'd come across a teacher. I just told him, I said, all right, I'm on a total timeout. I'll listen to as much as you have to tell me about your world right now and what you're up against, and anything we can do to increase the character and the integrity and improve the behavior of kids in the classroom. And again, that's contagious. It's, bad behavior is contagious, good behavior is contagious. So we want to do all we can for those teachers.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Senator Albright.
Thank you, Chair Merman, and thank you for bringing the bill as well. So that list that you gave us with 94 different chapters of different organizations certainly is not your intent that all 94 would be able to come into all of our schools, because the bill does say they shall listen to, they shall.
Yeah.
So,
But the bill says that those organizations would be candidates to be allowed they would qualify to come into the schools.
and that would
Yes.
be local control if they wanted to decide to have a dozen of them come in on one particular
Yeah.
day. And
Nothing about this bill declares the how. The how that would have to be determined by the school district working with each organization. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Any other questions? If not.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That'll conclude the hearing for LB 805. Sorry.
I'm gonna go get some.